Part 93. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahwa. Chapter 947. The relationship between people is born according to normal social ethics. It is generally easy to understand, but some are normal and some are abnormal. There is nothing unusual about being abnormal. Yan Qingcheng is just rare and strange after all. In the world of the eagle and the heaven, during the last sword debate in Mount Huashan, there was a young man named Zhang Sanfan. The legend appeared here. His life spanned from the late Song dynasty to the early Ming dynasty. At that time, the Zhou Fenglai sword sect was far away from the Middle Earth, and Suzhou was not included in the Huashan sword theory. Otherwise, the title of number one in the world would have to be added to the five great masters. Soon after, in 1273, Xiangyang city where Guodaxia was stationed was breached. When many people read this paragraph, they will lament that a great chivalrous person serves the country and the people. Some people will wonder, since he is a great hero who serves the country and the people, why doesn't he teach what he has learned throughout his life to more people? To improve combat effectiveness, choose to hide martial arts in the dragon-slaying sword and heavenly sword? In fact, it's just that Guodaxia was restricted by the author's traditional literati and scholar official thinking and pattern. No wonder he. Similarly, in 1273 AD, 7,777 kilometers west of the ancient Xiangyang battlefield, a man named Rudolf I became the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Rudolf I had 6 daughters, and it later evolved that most of the heirs to the throne of Europe were his grandsons. In this regard, he was comparable to Queen Victoria, another spreader of hemophilia. In order to make his family's bloodline more pure, Rudolf I vigorously promoted intermarriage within the family, which made the relationship between the prostitutes throughout Europe extremely confusing. So what? Rudolf I was the famous shoehorn-faced founder of the Habsburg family. How can one be so noble if he is so ignorant? Do you think you are a super being with the ability to purify and strengthen genes? Of course, Lu Chang'an and Qin Yinan are not as messy as they are. It's just a confusion in terms of names, not a matter of blood relationship. After he went upstairs, Qin Yinan was trying on a silicone prosthetic belly, which made Lu Chang'an stunned. Buying radiation-proof clothing, cribs, parenting books, and enrolling in maternity classes can be said to be an emotional experience. Why do you still have a fake belly? Lu Chang'an had only seen women doing this in the TV series that Shang Guandandan had watched about fighting for family property. Qin Yinan's waist is slender and light, her hips are full, and her height and legs are long. She looks more like a pampered young lady without any physical characteristics of a pregnant woman. After putting on the fake belly, her skirt fell down to cover it, and her fingers were placed on her lower waist. A hint of tiredness and laziness suddenly appeared between her brows. This pregnant woman's temperament was actually performed by Lu Chang'an in an instant. Hey, seeing her doing this on the spot, Qin Yinan laughed twice, but had no intention of taking it off and continued to adjust it there. There is no doubt that Yan Qingcheng picked up Yan Hui. As soon as they came downstairs, Qin Yinan couldn't wait to use the props. Lu Chang'an looked at the express box next to him and searched on the mobile app, preparing to learn more. There are quite a lot of people buying fake bellies for pregnant women. What do these people buy them for? Lu Chang'an thought for a while. Human beings are really messy creatures full of whimsical ideas. There are silicone fake bellies, memory foam ones, single babies, and twin babies. The weights are different by month. The seller recommends that customers buy 2-3 months, 4 months, and 4 months according to the needs of single or twin babies. 5 months, 6-7 months, etc. Different styles. How many months did you buy it? Lu Chang'an patted Qin Yinan's belly with the prosthetic belly. If he hadn't been experienced and noticed the difference between real and fake, it would have been difficult for ordinary people to tell the difference. A single fetus that is 4-5 months old weighs 3 pounds. Qin Yinan gently stroked her prosthetic belly, Actually, I want to give birth to twins and bring them together. It would be quite troublesome to have twins one after the other. Lu Chang'an felt that she was too confident. She was grateful to God for being pregnant with her first child. She still wanted to give birth to one child after another. Not to mention whether she had the ability, Lu Chang'an really didn't have it. At present, in the gestational sac stage, it is not certain how many babies there will be in the end. Twins are also possible, but it will be satisfying to have a single baby that grows up and is born healthily. Of course, if it bleeds after birth, even a precious single child must be stuffed back and remade. We are going to attend a pregnancy training class. You don't need to pretend, right? Just pretend that you don't show your pregnancy. Some people's bellies are not visible until they are 6 or 7 months old. Lu Chang'an also saw a pregnant woman who went to the mountains and fields to do farm work as usual. When everyone saw her holding a child, they thought it was someone else's child. This kind of thing happens not only in rural areas, but also in cities. Schoolgirls often give birth to their children in the toilet. Teachers and classmates didn't notice it before. I'm just going to give it a try. When I go to the training class today, I won't wear this. After the training class is over, the pregnant mothers in the class will organize some class activities for a while. I will choose February-March, or April-March, depending on the situation. Wear it in May and go to their activities. Qin Yanan has already made plans. The training class for pregnant mothers also holds a class reunion. Lu Chang'an gained knowledge again. Qin Yanan held her waist and walked around the living room while saying to Lu Chang'an, "Don't you understand this? Our training class for pregnant mothers is very high-end. It is essentially the same as those MBA training classes. Come and join this class. It's also very important to cultivate classes and expand your network." If you think about it, the pregnant mothers and children of this high-end training class in the same period are all of the same age. This is the friendship brought from the belly. They are basically the best kindergartens, elementary schools, junior high schools and high schools in Juncha, and their parents fight each other. We have prepared high-end connections for them since they were young, Qin Yanan explained. Lu Chang'an smiled and didn't take it seriously, but it's just that parents are doing this now. Where does Qin Yanan's child need the high-end connections in the pregnant mother training class? Qin Yanan didn't fall for this, but the more realistic the activity, the more interested she was, because it was very real to participate. The fake belly was no longer used. Qin Yanan put on a white cheongsam, which was elegant and luxurious. The black buttons were delicately inlaid with yellow edges. The golden carvings on the lining were faintly visible at the hem of the skirt, which was elegant and elegant. The cheongsam is not easy to control and has extremely high requirements on the figure, and such a platinum and black color requires an outstanding temperament. Those who dare to wear it with such confidence are all beauties selected from a million, or fairies with no talent. Qin Yanan certainly belongs to the former. She dresses like this just because she wants to travel through time with her brother and recreate the appearance of siblings Yechinayu and Yesijin back then. So Lu Chang'an changed his clothes and his face. He was also in a trance. Looking at the bright beauty in front of him, it seemed that Yesijin had never sacrificed and walked into this era alive with him. When I signed up for the class, I used a pseudonym, Yesijin. Qin Yanan looked at his dazed eyes, knowing that it was not easy for him to show such an expression. After all, the most unforgettable one is Yesijin, right? Qin Yanan smiled. She knew that most of his feelings still stayed with Yesijin. In his eyes, was she another sister, or was she Yesijin's substitute? Qin Yanan did not think of herself as Yesijin so easily, but she accepted that she used to be Yesijin and started a new life. This is not a pseudonym, this is a real name. Lu Chang'an was not happy to let Yesijin become a pseudonym and corrected Qin Yanan's statement. Let's go. Qin Yanan picked up a wool shawl that was big enough to be used as a blanket. I don't know since when, Qin Yanan has been partial to wool and cashmere products, and also likes to eat mutton and haggis. Goat milk tastes good after being prepared. In the future, when Lu Changchang is born, in addition to breastfeeding, you can also drink cow's milk and goat's milk. If she was allowed to form the concept that sheep are just food since she was a child, she would no longer be interested in bleeding all day long, which would make Zhu Huntang's various conspiracies against Lu Changchang come to nothing. Lu Chang'an looked at Qin Yinan's shawl. The woman was really strange. She might be afraid of the cold, but the slits of this cheongsam were quite high, which made people worry about the cold wind blowing into the spring river. He might say she was not afraid of the cold. This shawl was wrapped in a blanket. Like on the body. I understand. The function of this shawl is not only to keep out the cold, but also to block the sides when sitting down and prevent exposure. Lu Chang'an thought for 5 seconds and came to the conclusion, just like some female celebrities wearing skirts attending during the event, the organizer would also thoughtfully give her such things as shawls, cloaks, and blankets when she sat down. Of course, intentional exposure is another operation. Lu Chang'an is a little regretful. Since the crackdown on intentional exposure, there has been much less content for the public to enjoy and watch. Those first-generation internet celebrities who once relied on exposure to gain fame, I don't know what's going on now. I'm not so slit that I can't sit down, but it does have this effect. Let me tell you, the person who is most afraid of being exposed is Zhong Cheng. She seems to have a mental illness in this area. She didn't even know it before she came to the mainland. Those who wear skirts are still used to wearing 2 pairs of safety pants. Qin Yinan gossiped with Lu Chang'an by the way. Wear 2 pairs of safety pants. Lu Chang'an saw her sling today and didn't see any discomfort from her. Are her suspenders attached to her safety pants? It feels a bit strange, like those dancing masters at Station 13. Yes, she is very afraid of being exposed. As long as she thinks of being exposed and others seeing her skirt or something, just imagining such a scene, she will get a rash and have difficulty breathing. Qin Yinan pulled herself wearing a cheongsam. I glanced sideways at my brother and found that he seemed to be a little concerned about this kind of gossip. Lu Chang'an just thought that when Zhongqing came into contact with him, it was completely normal. It seems that this kind of mental illness purely varies from person to person. In front of upright people, Zhongqing will not have any stress reaction. She is just too guarded against other wretched people. Just a nasty person. After chatting and gossiping, they came to the parking lot. Qin Yinan and Lu Chang'an got in the car. As soon as they drove onto the mountain road, Lu Chang'an saw a black SUV following them from a distance. This seems to be Li Hongfang's car. Mercedes-Benz G63 is rare to begin with, not to mention it is a customized version of a certain modification brand. There may not be a second car with the same configuration in the entire continent. Lu Chang'an took out his mobile phone and was about to ask Li Hongfang what he wanted to do, but he received a message from Li Hongfang first. Brother Lu, I am investigating a major matter and will report to you soon. Tip: be mentally prepared first. Do you need to be mentally prepared first? Lu Chang'an looked back at the black SUV following furtively, and did not call Li Hongfang again. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 948. Brother, does my cheongsam look good today? Qin Yinan was dressed up. In this case, he should not take his eyes away. Even if you are pretending, you should still pretend like this. This is a sign of respect for the woman who carefully thought about her makeup in order to meet him. Men should know how to cherish this kind of treatment. You must know that the vast majority of women only give this kind of treatment in the early stages of a relationship. The later they go, the more casual they become. From preparing for going out for 3 hours to wait for me in 3 minutes, I'll pull it shit. It looks good, but I'm always worried about the workmanship and stitching of your clothes. It's better for you to wear looser clothes. Lu Chang'an was realistic and objective in his comments. Qinyanan is the kind of woman who has a spring breeze hidden under her clothes. If this dress cannot be stretched, a few wisps of spring breeze will blow over, causing the peach blossoms in the garden to bloom, and disturbing people's hearts. Qinyanan is not worried, but rather proud. Men always like to see women exposed. When he starts to worry about a woman being exposed, it means that he has developed an exclusive desire for this woman. She knew that her figure always made people feel like they were ready to show off, so she was also very concerned about the quality of her clothes. As long as Lu Chang'an didn't deliberately make her angry, the workmanship and stitching could still hold up. I'm just taking advantage of the fact that my belly isn't big yet to show off my figure. When my belly gets big, it might take 10, 8, or even decades to have a big belly. How can I wear these beautiful clothes then, but Qinyanan be mentally prepared? Generally, women are stressed about the impact of pregnancy on their figure, but the longest pregnancy can last only 10 months. Except for a few with special physiques, most people can generally recover as long as they actively carry out recovery training, cooperate with diet, and maintain mental health. But Qinyanan is not an ordinary woman. Her gestational sac has been in her belly for who knows how long. Who knows how long the big belly will last during pregnancy? The only reference is that when King Li Tianwang of Tota was still the commander-in-chief of Chintaguan, his wife's pregnancy lasted for 3 years and 6 months. Qinyanan felt that her pregnancy period would only be longer than Mrs Yan's 3 and 6 months, so it was necessary to wear more beautiful clothes now. Lu Chang'an nodded unconsciously. What Qinyanan said makes sense. Su Mei has experience in this matter. How long was the pregnancy period when she was pregnant with Zhu Huntang? Lu Chang'an has not discussed this issue with Su Mei, but it seems unrealistic to expect Qinyanan to communicate with Su Mei about this issue. Judging from Su Mei's attitude when she discovered the gestational sac in Qinyanan's belly, she may be willing to cooperate and participate in Qinyanan's pregnancy observation. The key is that Qinyanan may not be willing. Firstly, he has hostility and resentment towards Su Mei. Secondly, Qinyanan may be worried that Su Mei will take the opportunity to cause trouble. The possibility is unlikely, but from Qinyanan's perspective, she has to be careful. No matter how cautious she is during this period of pregnancy, she cannot be too cautious. Lu Chang'an did not discuss this topic with Qinyanan again. Anyway, as long as she was happy, a man should know how to be silent and agreeable, which would not harm him. The car drove through Bailong Center and entered the underground parking lot of the building opposite the Xiongnan People's Hospital. The location of the pregnant women's training class was very clever. It is next to the city's commercial landmark in Zhengzhaksan, which shows its class, and it faces a large hospital, giving pregnant mothers a sense of security and adding some medical professionalism. Neither the Bailong Center nor the hospital actually has anything to do with this training class, but the role of psychological suggestion cannot be underestimated. If it chooses any place at random, it may not be able to raise the grade and charge high fees. Qinyanan changed into high heels and got out of the car, and pulled up the hem. Wearing a cheongsam is a very particular thing. After sitting down, you have to pull your back to make it easier to sit down. Otherwise, there is a risk that the cheongsam will be stretched. You also have to stand up. Pull the hem to restore the smooth and soft lines. In short, women need to be very particular if they want to show their beauty and style. From the corner of his eye, Lu Chang'an noticed that the black SUV was also driving in, so he asked Qinyanan to tell him the floor and room number, and then Qinyanan went to take the elevator first. Lu Chang'an looked at Qinyanan's back, and after a minute he walked towards the safety staircase entrance and exit door next to him. Behind the gate is a space similar to a basement. It is relatively spacious and contains several electric vehicles. 2 of them belong to delivery boys, and there is also an electric moped with a QR code on the front and back that was burned by cigarette butts. He continued walking up, smelling a faint smell of urine. He looked up and found that there were no surveillance cameras in this corridor. The whole building looks pretty grand, but after all, it has been there for some time, and the cleaning and maintenance is still not comparable to that of a new building. Feeling that someone was following him, Lu Chang'an slowed down, and a strong wind hit him from the back of his head. Lu Chang'an turned sideways to avoid it, and when he looked back, it turned out to be Li Hongfang holding a baseball bat. "Young pretty boy, your skills are actually quite good." Li Hongfang was obviously a little surprised that he missed the one-hit stick, but still had a teasing smile on his face. He obviously thought that the pretty boy opposite him was just a mouse that managed to escape from a cat's claws. Lu Chang'an frowned and was about to speak when Li Hongfang suddenly picked up the stick and hit Lu Chang'an in the face with lightning speed. Although Li Hongfang's attack was swift and fierce, Lu Chang'an stepped back, taking his time and calmly climbing up the steps to avoid Li Hongfang's attack again. Only then did Li Hongfang feel that something was wrong. She didn't go shopping with anyone today. There was no need to reduce her armor to show off her figure, so as not to fall behind in front of brother Liu's woman, so she wore all her armor. With the blessing of the armor, even ordinary beasts may not be her opponent. How could this pretty boy in front of her, who made the sect master's head green, be so skilled? Could it be the exotic beast technician from the Women's Health Club? This is the only explanation. Qin Yinan is a woman who is full of voluptuousness. There are many women in the house, so she cannot be with her all the time. She is unbearably lonely and falls in love with the duck man. She really lives up to her name. With the abilities of these duck men, they might have unlocked Qin Yinan in all aspects. However, because the sect owner was too sullen and reserved most of the time, Qin Yinan felt that being with the duck men was more relaxed and interesting. This is also one of the reasons why women often cheat. Such scenes often appear in the social news and emotional stories that Li Hongfang has read. When Li Hongfang was investigating a women's health club, she saw some customers on the review software suggesting that the male technicians in this club had extraordinary abilities. One customer with the pseudonym A Green Lotus from Wudang Mountain said that the male technicians were very dedicated. Of course, a mature woman would understand this kind of hint. Li Hongfang had to sigh with emotion. Master, do you know that on the day you leave looking for death? Originally, I just wanted to capture you, castrate you, and then send you to the sect master for disposal. Now I decided to beat you to death and maim you first, then capture Qin Yinan, stuff them into a clay pot, and sink them into the river. Li Hongfang thought of herself. I thought about it day and night, begging the sect master to be lucky, but to no avail. This Qin Yinan wanted to cheat on the sect master and cuckold him, and he was furious. Li Hongfang, last time I changed my appearance, you haven't seen anything like this before. It's normal that you can't recognize it. Today, you see a strange face next to Qin Yinan again. After testing it, he is pretty good, so you can't think about it anymore. Think, maybe he's also your sect leader in disguise. Seeing Li Hongfang hit someone on the head with another extremely cruel club, Lu Chang'an raised his hand to block it and said. Li Hongfang looked at the bent stick and was stunned for a moment. His voice changed a little, but this tone immediately made Li Hongfang stand up straight with his legs together, and he woke up with a jolt. Door, master, Li Hongfang asked tentatively. Lu Chang'an raised his chin slightly and cast his gaze sideways on her face. Is this what you told me? Are you going to investigate and make me mentally prepared? Li Hongfang finally determined that the master of the sect was so wise and powerful. How could any woman who could be his wife be willing to be defiled by another man? After all, it was out of jealousy and fanaticism that I lost my reason and normal analytical ability. Just like those bullies, I was unable to analyze specific things in detail, separated from the background and environment of the incident, and just made false claims based on my own wishes. Of random thoughts. Master, I was wrong, please punish me. Li Hongfang did not defend himself, threw away the baseball bat, and bowed his head to admit his mistake. Li Hongfang's attitude of admitting mistakes is what Lu Chang'an appreciates the most. She occasionally has nonsense reasons to explain, but that is just because there are real problems with her thinking and ideas, rather than using strong words or clever words to blame others. Lu Chang'an looked at her. If a pretty boy had followed Qin Yanan today, he would have been beaten to death or disabled by Li Hongfang. She was really ruthless, and she was worthy of saying that she did not belong to the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect, and at least she was an elite tomb robber, a real elite, not an elite like Zhu Huntang's self-proclaimed elite gang. Now is a society governed by law, and there are cameras everywhere. You must keep in mind the core socialist values, and don't be so impulsive when doing things in the future. At least make sure you are not in any trouble before killing. Lu Chang'an educates carefully, and Li Hongfang is his direct disciple. Of course it needs to be cultivated, and educating Li Hongfang is much more comfortable than educating that sheep. Educate Li Hongfang, and she will listen to whatever you say. Educate that sheep, if you say one thing, she will say 10 things to you. Yes, the door master Li Hongfang thought about it carefully. The door owner was indeed impeccable in his work. He rubbed so many people without any problems at all. Li Hongfang went back to many scenes and paid attention to various reports and tracking, but there was no exposure. What key clues could get him into trouble? In a situation like today, you must first remain calm. Then, although there are no cameras in the corridor, your personal information that can be tracked when you enter and exit the security entrance and parking lot is left behind. Lu Chang'an continued to walk upstairs, signaling Li Hongfang followed. More than 40 floors of stairs may sound scary, but in fact, it doesn't take much to walk on them, so it's just like a walk. I understand, it is normal to leave personal information, and these clues can help people get rid of suspicion. For example, the surveillance records that the door owner entered and left a certain room within 1 minute, and everyone later discovered that within this minute, 10 girls were raped, and no one would believe it was you, but in fact it was you. Things that ordinary people can't do are easy for you, the sect leader, but the evidence is inconsistent with common sense. Even if you are suspected, the criminal inference is not valid. Li Hongfang understood what Lu Chang'an meant by drawing inferences. Taking advantage of the dark safety stairs and no one taking the stairs without taking the elevator like them, Lu Chang'an ordered Li Hongfang to turn around and take off the armor on her buttocks. Her level of yin and yang was worthy of Lu Chang'an's fancy and she could go and fight with her. The people who faced the line from the poor and remote villagers. It's just that this level is used on the master of the sect who has great respect for her. If she doesn't make her butt swollen, she will be sorry. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 949. After punishing Li Hongfang, Lu Chang'an clapped his palms and felt that his fingers were slippery and greasy. Li Hongfang took out the wet wipes, bit his lip, and carefully wiped each of his fingers clean. After being beaten, she had to wipe the hand that hit her clean. This humiliating female uniform and humble posture gave Li Hongfang an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. No wonder I didn't feel anything about the so-called sweet romance dramas with warm men, but I enjoyed watching the dramas in which the heroine was tortured to death and was finally eaten up by the scumbag. It is said that Shang Guandandan also likes to watch this kind of unconventional TV series, and we can communicate more with him in the future. This kind of information was also leaked to Li Hongfang by Zhou Shuling. Zhou Shuling had no scheming intentions and was rarely defensive about her friends. She did not know that she had passively joined Shang Guandandan's palace fighting circle. Li Hongfang asked her to inquire about Shang Guandandan. Zhou Shuling was say what you know. Make up your own stories from now on, don't take me with you. Lu Chang'an can actually do what Li Hongfang described, he just needs to grow a lot of hands and tools on his body. but he is a normal man with normal human aesthetics, and he will never transform himself into a pervert just because he wants to do perverted things. It's normal for people to have perverted thoughts from time to time, but people who are pursuing it must do perverted things elegantly and full of fun, and sublimate their actions under the incredible gaze. Those who can have this kind of consciousness are generally those who are engaged in literature, film, and art. They lack the health, sunshine, and happiness brought by physical labor all year round, so they only know how to move closer to the perverted side, and use all kinds of cruel, vulgar, erotic things are packaged and labeled with elegance and fun, catering to the inner darkness and a specific audience. Normal people don't need this kind of awareness. Abnormality is just abnormality. No matter how you package it, the core is not a good thing. Logically speaking, digging graves is physical work, and it is also physical labor. You should be more sunny, more positive, and have more beautiful things in your heart instead of always thinking in abnormal places. Lu Chang'an looked at Li Hongfang. The waist and hip lines are by no means the weak type. They have the kind of muscle lines that only people who exercise regularly and do manual labor have. Brother Lu, after I left the family gang, I recruited people to work alone and had my own team. The physical work was usually done by other people in the team. As long as I use a little wisdom, I belong to the team's think tank, and leader Li Hongfang didn't want to let others do the hard work. Lu Chang'an felt that he was brainless. He only knew that digging in the soil would inevitably feel a bit like having strong limbs and a simple mind. Even though women with big buttocks and no brains are cute, but as a direct disciple of the sect leader, you can't act cute like a vase every day, right? She hopes to actively participate in various actions in the door like before. Although in various previous actions, she didn't play a very versatile role, but she also actively made suggestions and provided the sect leader with many ideas, right? Go ahead and do what you're supposed to do. Stop following Qinyanan. Even if she turns into a green train, she won't derail her. Lu Chang'an waved his hand. Li Hongfang looked at Lu Chang'an with admiration. As expected of the door owner, he always had hidden meanings in his words. Regarding rail transportation, the first thing people think of now are high-speed rail and subway, but the door owner still thinks about the green train, which shows that he is a people who are nostalgic. At the same time, it also means that Lu Chang'an believes that Qinyanan is now as popular as the high-speed rail and is his first choice to ride. In the future, when she is old and beautiful, she will be an occasional choice like the green train, and will be ignored, but she will still not. Cheating is worthy of his trust. Li Hongfang left silently. Although he had always been unconvinced with Qinyanan, the sect owner also saw his preference for Qinyanan. There was nothing he could do about it. Today was a joyless day. It seems that men prefer faces after all. They always have more trust in beautiful women. Looking at her beautiful face, they are naturally willing to associate more beautiful qualities with her. The idea that men look at their faces when they are young, then their legs, and finally their buttocks are all lies. From a young man to an old man, men actually look at their faces. What they make up is that looking at their legs seems to be a change and improvement in taste, but it is just an old age. The man is just pretending to the young man. We must know that men are always naive in their own non-professional fields. How can they make progress in their desire for women? Li Hongfang's figure is naturally comparable to Qinyanan's, but who makes Shang Guandandan's beauty comparable to that of Qinyanan in the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect? Zhu Huntang is also very good looking, but she is more of a cute type, and her behavior is similar to that of a high-end humanoid pet raised by the owner, so she is excluded. Do you want to have a plastic surgery? The sect leader should support the saying that a woman should have a face that pleases her, but his plastic surgery is more like a disguise, and it is not permanent. The face of the new assistant next to Miss Zuda it's extremely perfect, but Li Hongfang doesn't know him very well, so he can ask Zhongqing for consultation. Li Hongfang was originally a talent recruited by Su Mei, and of course she knew Zhongqing. However, since Su-mei left for Antarctica, she had basically no contact with Zhongqing. But it doesn't matter, women will always maintain the relationship of friends on the scene, chatting and talking about things, and they will soon look like good sisters. Lu Chang'an didn't know what Li Hongfang's mental journey was like, from failing to catch a rapist to trying to have plastic surgery. He walked along the safety stairs to the target floor. Looking at the numerous company names on the floor signs, Lu Chang'an remembered the Beilong Center next door, where Zhu Huntang occupied the fourth floor. He thought that if Su-mei grounded Zhu Huntang in the future, she should be given a single room to be locked up, which is called grounding. She can move freely within the 4 floors of a skyscraper. What kind of confinement is this? What she said was grounded, but now there are 10 or 20 office workers from companies on this floor. Wouldn't that mean they were jailed? What surprised Lu Chang'an was that he saw an area being renovated, and the copywriting on the blocking cloth turned out to be about the DSB team. In other words, the DSB team will have a professional esports base instead of continuing to stay in the internet cafe. Lu Chang'an remembers that last year, Professor Lu and Professor Ling had a so-called crazy night after they became young girls. They stayed in the internet cafe all night and then got infected. The smell of smoke mixed with betel nut comes back. The internet cafe they went to was the former training base of the DSB team. It seems that after officially entering the LPL, the team has received a lot of financial support, although the new teams that enter the LPL every year are often small and transparent because they have not accumulated popularity, but it is the LPL after all, and a league seat can be sold for a lot of money. It is normal to get some investment. I hope Lin Xinhua can achieve good results. Lu Chang'an doesn't pay much attention to the game league, but in an environment with a strong gaming atmosphere, he is always exposed to a lot of relevant information on a daily basis. It is said that in the LPL spring game that has already started, Lin Xinhua's performance very prominent. After Lu Chang'an stopped and looked at it, he walked to the other end of the floor. The training class for pregnant women was affiliated with a high-end service company. It was introduced that it could provide services ranging from presidential and parliamentary elections in large and small countries, African nation building, arms trade, island construction and purchase, and more, to private residence maintenance, family education, and other services. The walls were also hung with dignitaries, rich people, etc. from various countries that the company had served. One night scene caught Lu Chang'an's attention. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a photo of a group of black people and a white-skinned company executive. Awesome, Lu Chang'an thought for a while and praised the other company's strong business capabilities. Arriving at the lounge of the pregnant women's training class, the students and their companions were introducing themselves. After all, this class itself is also a social occasion. Everyone is well dressed and full of elite style. As for the identity of these companions, whether they are husbands, boyfriends, lovers, etc., no one has elaborated. Anyway, being able to appear in public means that they are not afraid of exposing their relationship. Qin Yinan waved, and Lu Chang'an sat next to her. He had no intention of making connections on this occasion, but others seemed to be paying close attention to him. After all, there was such a mature, beautiful, and sweet woman sitting next to him. Some people even think that if they have such a wife or girlfriend, why would they have to wait until they are 30 before letting her give birth? No. 35, but 35 is also a good age. It's the time when that charm comes out. How about 40? Hey, how can such a woman be allowed to give birth to a child? At least you should learn from the women in the entertainment industry. What are you doing? Qin Yinan asked in a low voice. I met Li Hongfang and chatted with her for a few words. Qin Yinan frowned. In fact, she and Li Hongfang had no grudges originally. The main reason was that Li Hongfang was Su-mei's person. She couldn't understand that her master had already gone to Antarctica to become the Penguin King. He was still standing on Sumei's position and was full of hostility towards Qin Yinan. This kind of person can be said to be loyal to his old master, which is a good character, but after all, he is a bit stupid. However, Li Hongfang's current tit-for-tat words and deeds towards Qin Yinan are mainly because of Lu Chang'an, right? Qin Yinan thought for a moment. It was Qin Yinan's request that his brother changed his appearance today. Li Hongfang probably didn't know about it beforehand. Thinking of this, Qin Yinan sneered. Li Hongfang probably saw him and his brother going out and thought he had caught Qin Yinan's adultery or something. It's a pity that since her brother chatted with her for a few words, he should have made it clear, if Li Hongfang was not discovered and took it upon himself to contact Sumei, the master and servant would take this opportunity to stir up trouble and end up shooting themselves in the foot. That's interesting. It was Qin Yinan's turn to introduce himself soon. Qin Yinan stood up, smiled slightly, and introduced himself as a counselor at Xiongnan University. There is a difference between counselors and real university teachers, but they are generally called teachers. Female teachers at Shonan University are still very recognized and have a certain social status. There is a beautiful teacher from Xiongnan University. I know that your school also has a famous beautiful professor named Lu. There was a cultural event and the program submitted by Xiongnan University included this Professor Lu. He was highly praised by the leaders. A young but serious man in a suit nodded towards Qin Yinan and said. Qin Yinan just smiled slightly and did not respond. The man in a suit looked around and found that no one echoed his questions or spoke to him, especially Qin Yinan's distant and indifferent attitude, which seemed a bit indifferent. He frowned in displeasure, but he was too lazy to care about anything. After Qin Yinan introduced herself, it was Lu Chang'an's turn. In the training class for pregnant women, he couldn't say that he was an ordinary 19-year-old college student. Now he was Yechinayu, so he said, "My name is Yechinayu. I used to do some business, including railways, tobacco, plantations, ship manufacturing, maritime foreign trade, and arms. Buying and selling, finance, banking and real estate are also involved." "Brother, you have some skills." "Okay," a young man wearing fashionable brands couldn't help but laugh. "If you want to be able to get involved in these industries, you have to do it before liberation." Others also laughed. "Let's not talk about railways and tobacco. But arms trading? I told you, I did some business before." Lu Chang'an also laughed. "Then the family business was all gone, and now I am unemployed. I spend my free time at home with my wife." After Lu Chang'an finished speaking, he sat down. No one believed what he said, especially when he was unemployed and idle. Everyone did not feel disdain for this. Instead, it made people think that he was not interested in making friends with the people present, so he did not tell the truth. "I'm really immortal." Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 950. Today's class is Daily Lifestyle and Pregnant Posture during pregnancy. After finishing the class, the ladies will have a private event, while the men will wait in the lounge for the time being. At this time, the functionality of the high-end social environment is reflected. They are all men with families and businesses. They come here with a purpose. Naturally, they will not make friends based on their hobbies. What they care most about is the status of the other party and whether they are friends. Be useful to yourself and expand high-quality contacts. Lu Chang'an felt that maybe it was because the field he was involved in easily put people in jail, and no one wanted to make acquaintance with him, so when everyone gathered together in twos and threes to chat, he seemed lonely, and the men would not look at him from time to time. He glanced at him. He is much more popular among ladies. Even if her husband is next to her, her love for beauty cannot be suppressed and she frequently looks at him. So he picked up the magazines in the lounge and read them. The magazines here were all like Vogue, Rulai, Elle, and the like. What was very rare was that there was actually a copy of North Korea fashion. After flipping through it, At first glance, the clothes inside are quite similar to the style of the 1980s and 1990s here in China. But if you look closely, you will see that the model clothes inside are all suitable for ordinary girls. They look dignified, beautiful, and fresh. It's the way a serious person should dress. The makeup does not cater to the international style or white-skinned aesthetic at all. It is also very beautiful. There are also some quotations in the magazine that are also very unique. Lu Chang'an was reading with gusto. Just when Qin Yan'an was introducing himself, the young man who mentioned Lu Yuang came over and sat next to Lu Chang'an. His name is Huang Hidong, he is less than 30 years old this year, and he is a person in the system who is looking to go outside, so naturally he wants to find more opportunities. Mr. Ye, how many months has your teacher Qin been here? Huang Hidong said with a smile. During the self-introduction session just now, Huang Hidong felt a little embarrassed by Qin Yan'an, but after working in the system for many years, he still had this bit of face. It was related to advancement and promotion. Even if he had just been doused with amniotic fluid, what did it matter? Lu Chang'an thought about it for a while, and even Sumei, who had examined Qin Yan'an's body, couldn't tell when the gestational sac appeared. Then we can only estimate. Lu Chang'an reluctantly recalled the time, place, people, and scenes that made Qin Yan'an pregnant, and finally said, it must have been 1,000 or so months. Huang Hidong was stunned for a moment, then laughed and praised heartily, has Mr. Ye always been so humorous? Just now he said that he was involved in the arms trade, and now he said that he is more than 1,000 months pregnant. Your teacher Qin's pregnancy was long enough for Li Jing's wife, Mrs. Yin, to give birth to 30 Neza. But even if the other party was so unreliable, the conversation still had to continue. Huang Hidong continued to compliment with a smile, it is said that the most beautiful girl in Juncha is in the high school affiliated to Hunan University, but the most beautiful teacher is in the high school affiliated to Hunan University. I saw her today. Teacher Qin feels that it is not an exaggeration. Huang Hidong's compliment at this time was considered to be honest. He himself works in the education system and knows Juncha schools well. As a young man, even if he maintains an upright and serious style in his work environment, he prefers to pay attention to beauty in private. A girl and a beautiful teacher are also extremely natural things. That was before. Now the most beautiful girls and beautiful teachers are all at Hunan University. Talking about beauties is always a hot topic among men, and Lu Chang'an agreed. Huang Hidong understood instantly, the most beautiful girl graduated from high school and entered Hunan University and became the most beautiful college student. Lu Chang'an smiled and said, stop beating around the bush. If you have something to say, just say it. Huang Hidong laughed sarcastically, I just want to ask, is your teacher Qin familiar with Professor Lu? Lu Chang'an looked at Huang Hidong. Huang Hidong only felt that the man in front of him, who was about the same age as himself, had a dull gaze, as if he could see through people's hearts. The expression on his face was full of oppression, just like when he was facing a higher level leader, he was scrutinizing him. I will be filled with anxiety and fearful reflection, have I done something wrong? My teacher Qin and Professor Lu know each other, but not very well. I am quite familiar with Professor Lu. Lu Chang'an saw that Huang Hidong was not doing it for himself. Civil servants who are cautious and prudent are often very self-aware, and they know who they can achieve and what they cannot do. It is very mysterious for a woman like Professor Lu to be single all the time. She is not an orchid growing in the mountains that no one knows about. She has a wide social circle and has many rich and powerful people, but no one can make her golden house. Zhang Xiao, if ordinary people think about it for a moment, they will know that they are probably not capable of being such a lucky person. Huang Hidong is like Ma Hongbo, pulling a red line for his boss. No, what is that person's name? I made a mistake. Zhou Shuling's mother's name was Maliwa, and Maliwa's stepson was Xing Hongbo, the guy who kicked Zhou Dongdong out of the house. Lu Chang'an didn't kill him, so he could only predict his good fortune. Are you familiar with Professor Lu? Huang Hidong smiled even brighter. That's the case. Our leaders admire Professor Lu very much, but as a leading cadre, he is not suitable for taking the initiative to pursue him. I just want to mediate. Look at you. Can you think of a way to make an appointment with Professor Lu so that we can meet? Why is he not suitable for taking the initiative to pursue me? Lu Chang'an felt confused and waved his hand. This can't happen. Huang Hidong was a little anxious. How do you know it won't work? These are single men and women, so it wouldn't be a problem to meet each other. Professor Lu has certain requirements when choosing a mate. She said it herself that her boyfriend should be able to do both arts and martial arts, be proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, and poetry. Versatility is the most basic. He should be knowledgeable about astronomy and geography, and be knowledgeable and versatile. He is also considerate, humorous, and good at flirting with girls. Lu Chang'an could only express regret. Professor Lu is a typical example of choosing a spouse with extremely high standards, and then slowly becomes an older leftover girl. However, most older leftover girls slowly lower their requirements, forgetting their dreams of being the heroine in Mary Sue novels, and reluctantly, married to a common man with grievance. Of course, there are also some who are unwilling to lower their demands, but no one wants them. They stubbornly persist, exuding the noble fragrance of female independence and feminist ideas. Professor Lu didn't lower her demands, and it wasn't that no one wanted her. Her single status was purely force majeure. If it had been 10 years ago, she would have done so. How can there be such a person, seeing that the other party was talking nonsense and refusing to help? Huang Hidong looked slightly cold and couldn't help but sneer. Why do I feel that this is you? Lu Chang'an held the North Korean fashion magazine in his hand and felt the sarcastic words behind his back, as if piercing his spine, making the hair on the back of his head stand up defensively. It turns out that the private class for pregnant mothers has ended. Qin Yanan came over and heard Lu Chang'an and Huang Hidong chatting. Men, even if their wives are pregnant with children and preparing for pregnancy classes, they will talk about beauties like this and that. It's not me. Lu Chang'an turned the pages as usual, and then pointed to a page in the magazine. Yaya, do you think this black business suit suits you? This is a rather heavy and old-fashioned design. Can combine seriousness and sexiness when worn on you. Qin Yanan looked at him. This person always changed the subject so abruptly, but he seemed to think that he changed the subject very cleverly and would be able to divert her attention. Huang Hidong also stretched his head and said jokingly, yes, Teacher Qin has a good figure and can control any style. Thank you. Qin Yanan smiled slightly, and then pulled Lu Chang'an away. Tonight was the so-called dark and windy night. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 951. The night is like the sea, broad and tolerant, just like Qin Yanan's mind. At this moment, can she show narrow-mindedness, jealousy, resentment, or hysterical outbursts? These emotions that are often shown in women were calmly dispelled by Qin Yanan. The night is like a tide, turbulent and surging, just like the beauty of the world that rises and falls with Qin Yanan's breathing. It was said that he was training his husband, but it was because of his current status, he should not show his ambiguity with other women. After all, he is a brother. They say that an eldest brother is like a father. No matter how Qin Yanan teases and provokes her on weekdays, she respects him very much in her heart. It is not only due to his brother, but also due to the reverence for their generation after receiving modern historical education and ideological influence, and also the heartfelt admiration for extraordinary people. Emotions are complex, and when and what kind of emotion dominates, people will behave differently. Qin Yanan's relationship with him is very complicated, and her feelings are naturally complicated. She decided to stand tonight on the side of ambiguity between husband and wife during pregnancy, wanting my brother to be my sister, and a counselor who found out that a colleague was having an affair with her student with these identities, they came to talk to him. Her job is as a teacher, and teachers are very good at talking. Brother, how do you usually deal with the memories that have occurred over the years? Chinyanan sat in the car, took off her high heels, and looked at her toes in confusion. Because of her tall figure, Chinyanan's shoe size is a little larger than that of ordinary girls, but it doesn't look rude. It's just that the stockings are useless. The stockings purchased in the market are often stretched out and feel thin and see-through. Luxury grade stockings customization is far more troublesome than clothing customization. After all, there are very few customers with such needs. Fortunately, Chinyanan has a good sister Zhu Huntang, and one of Zhu Huntang's hobbies is collecting and customizing various kinds of stockings. Such socks. She pressed her instep and looked sideways at her brother. In his memory, Yesijan's figure should not be as exaggerated and slender as Chinyanan's. She should be one size smaller, closer to Professor Liu's figure, right? Do you know the welfare photographer? Lu Chang'an asked back. Chinyanan is the welfare photographer's most dream photo target. Chinyanan shook her head in confusion. She did know that Lu Chang'an had recently bought a camera and lens. Shang Guandandan took a selfie hanging around his neck and posted it on WeChat, and also took some stream of consciousness photos, but she didn't know how to transfer the photos from the camera to the mobile phone. Then use the mobile phone to take the picture displayed on the camera screen and then send it to Moments. Some girls will take some relatively large-scale photos, mainly with two-dimensional character COS, and then sell them. The photographer who takes the photos and is responsible for the post-production for them is called welfare photographer. Lu Chang'an explained. Welfare photography teachers are not as interesting as most people think. Because in fact, only a very small number of these welfare girls have figures and looks as attractive as their photos. Most of these welfare girls have short and round legs. Their biggest selling point is that they have accumulated more fat due to obesity, and then the photographers have to work hard in post-production, so the same welfare girls, if you look at too many photos of them, you will find that their bodies look exactly the same in every photo. Only those photographers who are relatively well known in the industry will be picky and find some cooperative welfare girls who are willing to shoot with them and who they think are good photos. What does this have to do with my problem? Chinyanan is not very exposed to this kind of thing, but because of Zhu Huntang, she does know some relevant gossip and anecdotes. For example, she is sure that if the two-dimensional Big Touch Bai Fen wants to be welfare G will definitely be a hit, and her photographer will most likely be Lu Chang'an. Chinyanan has no contact with Bai Hui. After all, my best friend's best friend may not be my best friend but is more likely to be a sneaky little ho god. When the welfare photographer is shooting, after the post-production is completed, he will create a new folder, put the photos in, and then compress the folder and upload it to the network disk. Because the scale is large, if it is not compressed, it has been harmonized and cannot be uploaded or downloaded. Lu Chang'an continued. Lu Chang'an has never worked as a welfare photographer, but based on the current social environment, laws and regulations and other relevant information, he can analyze the general situation. Chinyanan vaguely understood what he meant, and tapped her thigh lightly with her fingers. There was nothing she could do about it. Once she sat down on this cheongsam, it was basically like two pieces of cloth hanging on the front and back. The happy couple had no outsiders, she didn't cover herself up with a shawl. My memory is the same. Take this period of Yechenayu's life as an example. It has been settled and is basically in the past tense. It is equivalent to the filming and post-production being completed. So I set up a folder called Yechenayu to compress all related memories. It's inside. When you need it or think of it on your own initiative, you can open it, look through it, and reflect on it. Lu Chang'an nodded his head. Of course, I have more than one folder in my mind. Just when I'm with you, the folder I open most often is Yechenayu's, and Professor Lu Jianshi's folder is also opened more often. That is to say, the newly created file is called Luchang'an. Your daily life, people, and things related to you are being collected like photos. Until one day, when no more photos are taken, the folder will be compressed. Luchang'an my life has ended, and a new folder has been created, with new people and new things put in it like pictures. He used a more literary and interesting metaphor to explain it, but it made Chinyanan feel melancholy. It's just for your convenience. It doesn't mean that they are exactly the same. After all, just like Yechinayu and Lujianshi, Luchang'an's life is not completely separated. After all, some emotions cannot even be packed in a compressed package. Luchang'an was always gentle to Yesijin, and he stretched out his hand. He grabbed Chinyanan's shoulders and hugged her into his arms. What makes the scene worse is that Chinyanan's seat belt deformed, Luchang'an's nose touched her soft and fragrant hair, and then he let her go. Chinyanan closed her eyes the moment he hugged her. Her cheeks were slightly warm and sweet. She regretted that her habit of fastening her safety as soon as she got in the car didn't seem to be a perfect habit. What you said makes me feel uncomfortable asking for punishment. Chinyanan said this, but she was still thinking in her heart. How could a woman not feel comfortable asking for punishment? What women are best at is calling the shots, especially women like Chinyanan and Sume. They can even open up old scores from more than 100 years ago and ask you, are you afraid? The most troublesome thing is that when a woman asks you to accuse her, she doesn't want you to explain or reason with you, but she wants to coax you, but men rarely realize this. The more times they do it, the more they will have only one thought in their mind: let's break up. Chinyanan's accusation today is of course not to settle old scores. She has no intention of being a sister who upsets her brother. She just said a few words of annoyance with a hint of coquettishness in a private environment. This is what a woman wants a man to be patient with. Attitude towards achieving one's goals. A while ago, the school launched a study on confidentiality and network security issues for teachers. Experts mentioned that in fact, if you compress and upload files now, they will still be decompressed and reviewed by the cloud. Chinyanan thought of the statement, some violations do not upload content that is in line with public order, good customs, and general ethics, and it is best not to produce such content. Luchang'an smiled, went around in circles, and finally got down to business. Chinyanan had always been at odds with An Nuan, and now he was going to have trouble with Professor Liu. Forget An Nuan, where is Professor Liu? Luchang'an is very consistent with Professor Liu's criteria for choosing a spouse, but that doesn't mean that Professor Liu will choose Luchang'an. These are two completely different things. The relationship between Luchang'an and Professor Liu is very pure. Even if they appreciate each other, it is communication and speculation on a spiritual level and has nothing to do with what Chinyanan thinks. Maybe in Chinyanan's eyes, there is a suspicion of melon fields and plum trees, but as long as he keeps himself upright, melon fields and plum trees are just melon fields and plum trees, so there is no problem. In the past, some people divided their houses for demolition: divorced parents, divorced husbands and wives, divorced father-in-law and mother-in-law, combined marriages, etc. People did it for money, and when the matter was over, they would recover, or they would not recover. It's your own fault. Chinyanan continued to advise earnestly, although I'm not entirely sure that you and An Nuan will make it to the end. Professor Liu's identity is still here, and we must keep a distance. I'm afraid of unintentionally inserting Lulu into the shade. Chinyanan couldn't help but start to recall some of the scenes he saw of Professor Liu and Luchang'an's contact. There weren't many, but with a different mentality, he just felt something was wrong. If you have the opportunity to observe again in the future, you will definitely be able to find some clues. When I was watching TV with Shang Guandandan a while ago, there was a program about a son-in-law. His wife and mother-in-law were in a car accident. The wife died, but the son-in-law and mother-in-law survived. The son-in-law was afraid that his mother-in-law would be lonely and lose his daughter's confidence in life. Frustrated and losing the motivation to live, She kept accompanying and taking care of her mother-in-law, and later her son-in-law married her. Lu Chang'an laughed. At that time, Shang Guandandan said that she saw that the car accident was arranged by his son-in-law and mother-in-law. Although she knew that he was changing the subject, Qin Yan'an still objected in disbelief. How is that possible? I know that some people are like snakes and scorpions and can do anything, but after all, they are a small minority. If this is the case, how can they dare to go on TV? This is the same as a criminal returning to a crime scene to watch. The more guilty and deceitful he is, the more he wants to show his openness in front of the public. Lu Chang'an shook his head. I just looked casually and didn't pay much attention. It's not like you don't know that Shang Guandandan likes to talk nonsense, and her words can't be accurate. Qin Yan'an felt uncomfortable in his heart, just like reading a literary work about suffering, and he couldn't help but take on the perspective of his dead wife. You have also seen that modern society seems to be open and tolerant, but because public opinion spreads more easily, the pressure and lethality brought by speech are actually greater. In the past, the spread of rumors had limitations. If you leave your hometown, rumors will hurt you. There is less, but now you have nowhere to escape, and rumors can spread to every corner. Lu Chang'an touched Qin Yan'an's head. If it is really a designed car accident, then it can only be said that these people would rather do this than I dare not expose my wife publicly while she is alive. How dare Professor Lu? It is inevitable that people sometimes have wild thoughts and random thoughts, but it is precisely because everyone knows that they are wild thoughts and random thoughts, so they will restrain themselves and control themselves rationally. Children often have Electra and Oedipus complexes, so what? Basically not what problems will develop. After Lu Chang'an finished speaking, he looked at Qin Yan'an in confusion. You are pregnant, your body is swollen, and your mind is also swollen? Where do you find the courage to educate your brother? Hearing what his brother said was better than 10 years of reading chicken soup, Qin Yan'an was confused and said angrily, "What's swelling? It sounds like fermentation. Then I must be 7 or 8 months pregnant. I'm still in shape now, it remains the same, except that the previous tattoo is a little tight, so it should still be affected a little bit." Lu Chang'an has rich experience, but he does not have a sharp eye. What's more, a woman's cup size is a very magical variable, and he cannot accurately see various real-time data. After he finished speaking, he found that he had accepted Qin Yan'an's pregnancy by default, even though men are always easy to fall into the drama of women's acting. Women are not only natural actors, but also excellent screenwriters and directors. Go back. Lu Chang'an took the flat shoes from the shoe box to Qin Yan'an. Qin Yan'an put her high heels in and put on flat shoes. She glanced at him and found that he was actually watching her change shoes. She felt a little shy and satisfied. Even if he was just admiring it, it meant that she was beautiful enough. En nuance pair. Even if his legs were the invincible long legs of a beautiful girl, they were only invincible among beautiful girls. He couldn't resist his mature plumpness and moist charm. No longer entangled in Professor Liu's mate selection standards, it was as if they were tailor-made for his brother. Qin Yan'an and Lu Chang'an talked about the course just now, talking in detail all the way. Qin Yan'an dropped Lu Chang'an off the car at Tongcheng Commercial Plaza in Rongwan Town. He adjusted his face before getting off the car and wouldn't go to spend time with Yan Hui tonight. There used to be a Xinyiajia supermarket here in Tongcheng Commercial Plaza. When Walmart and Carrefour entered Juncha, it was already the favorite local supermarket for Juncha people. Although it originated in Shenzhen, its development focus is in southern Hunan. Now bankrupt, the boss Li Binlan is nepotistic and lacks modern management thinking. She is a strong woman, but not a talented woman. Their own rice noodle shop, forget it, just let Li Hongfang and Zhou Shuling do whatever they want, and the little rich will be fine. Thinking of Cao appeared. Lu Chang'an just talked about Li Hongfang and saw her walking across the street, followed by 2 fashionable young people wearing Balenciaga. Lu Chang'an sniffed and grabbed a hint of information from the air, including the body fragrance of Li Hongfang and the earthy smell of the two trendy young people. It seems that these two people just dug a female tomb from the long Qing period of the southern Song dynasty within a week. The female tomb collapsed due to an earthquake and flooded the tomb. They were the second wave of people to enter the tomb. Lu Chang'an made a wild guess. If you can guess this, that is not an extraordinary creature, but one that can read minds. He did hear the two young people call Li Hongfang's sister, respectfully. It seemed that Li Hongfang, who had established her own business at a young age, was quite famous among her tribe. The appearance of these people might have something to do with her plans to dig them up. It is related to the number 2 tomb of Hai Hanyue. Lu Chang'an ignored her and sent a message to Zhongqing, asking her if she was hungry. "I'm hungry everywhere." Zhongqing replied with such a message, paired with a selfie of her wearing white work clothes, a shirt, and a one-step skirt underneath. If an average man sees such a photo, he is afraid that he will misunderstand it, turn into a hungry wolf and rush over to feed her. Of course Lu Chang'an would not misunderstand. He looked at the photo carefully. Her legs were slender and her lower abdomen was smooth. It looked like she was not full. So Lu Chang'an went to a nearby hotpot restaurant, bought a copper pot with blazing charcoal fire, clear soup, sesame paste, and a large box of fat sheep, and went to find Zhongqing. When eating hot pot mutton, you need to dip it in sesame sauce. Zhongqing is still in the underground base, and the project is progressing rapidly. Lu Chang'an wants to take a look and have a late-night snack with Zhongqing. He steadily carried the food and hot pot utensils, and walked slowly. The clear soup in the copper pot did not splash at all, and the charcoal fire was strong for passers-by to look at. He couldn't help but feel that on such a cold and windy spring night, he should have a copper pot. Indirectly promoted economic development and made a positive contribution to the internal circulation. When they arrived at the underground base, Lu Chang'an saw Zhongqing. She had already taken off her white work clothes. She was stunned to see Lu Chang'an actually carrying a copper pot large enough for 6-8 people at the table. The food we ate at Zhu Huntang's in the evening was too refined and lacked satiety. It was enjoyment but not satisfaction. Lu Chang'an mentioned the copper pot. "Eat the hot pot first, and then I'll take a look at your virtual world project after eating. This is a precision laboratory base. If someone else comes in with a charcoal-fired copper pot, they will be fired." Zhongqing bent down, and the charcoal fire of the copper pot made her cheeks flush, but she was not embarrassed at all. "Any solution?" "Lu Chang'an is not the boss, but he can be her boss." Zhongqing led Lu Chang'an to her office, and suddenly felt a little comfortable eating from a copper pot in the office. This man could always make the little things in daily life in the market interesting, just like every time she and he were in Zhongbian Daifeng had a late-night snack at a barbecue stall, but in retrospect, it seemed like we were on a date. Lu Chang'an set up the copper pot, arranged the ingredients, added some sugar and vinegar to the sesame paste, and mixed it to test the taste. It was just right. He could definitely be the person who showed off his own dipping sauce during the hot pot dinner. Zhongqing took a photo of the table, showing Lu Chang'an's hands, and then posted it on WeChat Moments. "My friend brought a copper pot. This mutton shabu shabu is so delicious. I will probably gain 3 pounds tomorrow. Are we friends?" Zhongqing looked at Lu Chang'an with complicated eyes. "You want to start counting godfather and goddaughter now, and I accept that." Lu Chang'an clapped his hands and prepared to eat before talking. In fact, he was quite satisfied with the food in Nanshan. It was his first meal at Zhu Huntang's place after he came back. It was made by her chef Zhang Jiai, and it was too delicate. Zhongqing rolled her eyes at him, and then showed Lu Chang'an the moments she just posted. "I set it up so that only Bai Hui can see it. Do you think she can find out that you and I are eating hot pot? Why are you teasing her? She has been out for a few days and is busy doing the things she has accumulated in the past few days. She is also a boss now, With her own studio and business, Lu Chang'an shook his head. These women are really idle. Yes, I want to inquire about gossip no matter what, or stir up some gossip myself so that others can pay attention to it. Zhongqing pursed his lips and smiled. In fact, this place is not far from Bai Hui's studio. If Bai Hui really wants to come here to eat hot pot or be eaten, that's fine. Zhongqing still has this authority to let his little cousin wander around outside the confidential area, which is the area where administrative work, office, life, and rest are done. New Moon, Chiu Moon Pio. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 952. Zonking's cheeks were illuminated by the charcoal fire, her soup was piping hot, and her whole body felt warm, so she unbuttoned the 2 buttons on her chest. It wasn't to seduce Lu Chang'an. Zhongqing's conversation with Lu Chang'an today was half truth and half false, revealing some thoughts. It didn't mean that she was like some love-minded little cousin. She has a lot of work and things to do. Once she is busy, her physical and psychological needs will not seem so urgent. It is better for women not to focus solely on men. Having their own careers and hobbies often allows both parties to have more space and have more relaxed and interesting topics, which is good for everyone. Zhongqing now shows a desire for Lu Chang'an, mainly because of his menstrual period. After a while, the turbulent thoughts have faded away, and he will no longer be greedy for his body. As for the arrival of the next menstrual period, let's talk about it later. Anyway, it feels good to eat hot pot and talk about serious things now, and feel a little ambiguous. This project was originally directed by the third wife in the direction of brain development, so that ordinary people's brains can have the abilities of high IQ talents. Zhongqing stuffed the mutton into his mouth and suddenly thought, this is mutton hot pot. The food in Taiwan is cheap, and there is actually no delicious food. It is difficult for Taiwanese people to eat local mutton or high-quality imported mutton. There is sheep meat everywhere that no one eats in the mainland. They have a so-called mutton stove, which is similar to the casseroles here in mainland China. They put a bunch of Chinese medicine and seasonings to completely remove the unique and slightly umami flavor of sheep. In this way, you use duck and pork. When made, the taste is the same. It feels like it's been a long time since I've had such a serious hot pot. Lu Chang'an saw that Zonking's food was delicious, and his own food became more delicious. Everyone was eating he's, so there was an atmosphere of eating. This is why he often likes to stay with Shang Guandandan, Zhou Dongdong, and Zhou Shuling go out to eat and drink. Reason: Zhou Shuling is actually very good at eating, but she is a traditional little woman. Seeing her family eating well makes her very happy and satisfied. If there is too much left, she will be more active. Sweep it clean to avoid wastage. If the brains of ordinary people can also have the abilities of high IQ talents, will it also develop some superpowers? Lu Chang'an asked with interest. In fact, such research is not uncommon, but it has achieved very few achievements and does not have the conditions for widespread application. The results are often only special cases. Su Mei's goal is obviously not to develop some health products and sell them to parents or students taking entrance exams. It depends on how you define superpowers. Zhongqing thought for a while and said, I personally think that superpowers are those that are beyond the capabilities of ordinary people, such as supermemory and supercomputing power, but after the brain develop and then be able to control objects with your thoughts, that is definitely impossible. Lu Chang'an nodded. Su Mei was very ambitious. The transformers under her only strengthened and transformed the body's muscles and bones without touching their brains. It seems that even the ancient civilization technology that Su Mei mastered is still a limited lead in research involving the brain, and is not as far ahead of modern technology as in other fields. Now, you know, the third wife went to Antarctica, and our wise third lady got involved in things here. She thinks that this brain development project is for her Xianmei, who is not good at learning, and wants to transform her into a robot that only knows how to learn, so she asked that the project be developed in the direction of games, otherwise she would stop funding, even if the initial investment is already an astronomical figure, Zhong Qing said with some helplessness. Although every time when Lu Chang'an taught Zhu Huntang a lesson, Zhong Qing would speak up for Zhu Huntang and explain how outstanding and proud Zhu Huntang was. But now that Zhu Huntang's halo has radiated into Zhongqing's work scope, it makes him, Zhong Qing felt a little uncomfortable. Lu Chang'an frowned, picked up the mutton, put it into the copper pot, shook it, took it out, dipped it in sesame sauce, and stuffed it into his mouth without saying anything. When eating mutton hot pot, don't mention Zhu Huntang. Lu Chang'an saw Zhong Qing hesitate to speak and reminded her in time to avoid affecting her appetite. By the way, Lu Chang'an showed Zhong Qing the video he shot that day, which showed Zhu Huntang having her wool cut off and thrown into a soup pot, turning into a drowned sheep that fainted. Zhong Qing couldn't help laughing. The mutton on his chopsticks fell off. He put down his chopsticks with a smile and pressed his cheeks to prevent his whole face from being deformed when he smiled. After women put on makeup, they often pay attention to their smiles to be reserved, so as not to create the impression that they are in trouble. The feeling of shaking powder. After watching this video and continuing to eat mutton hot pot, don't you feel that you don't have so much resentment towards her? Lu Chang'an put away his phone and referred to her as she, still not wanting to mention Zhu Huntang's name. This is true, Zhong Qing continued to cook the mutton with a smile. This project is progressing smoothly at present, especially after you sent the Mirage over, it has developed by leaps and bounds, Zhong Qing continued. In the past, even if we were making online games, the structure of the game world involved a huge amount of data content. The most critical thing is the data transmission through the brain interface, which is not the level of difficulty just used for simple neural repair. Phantom, why can this project advance so rapidly? Lu Chang'an stopped his chopsticks and asked him about the concept of brain interface. He had been exposed to it in the 1970s and 1980s, but in fact, related projects only began to grow significantly in the mid-1990s. Research results. I'm not an expert in this field, Zhong Qing smiled. According to the person in charge, the CPU used to be responsible for computing tasks in the entire virtual world, but now there is an additional GPU responsible for graphics processing, which is the Mirage. The most important thing is that Mirage's ability allows users to directly enter the virtual world. It can act as a brain interface. The world it shows to users does not require the transmission of huge amounts of data to the human brain through the brain interface. The more Lu Chang'an listened, the more interested he became. He did not expect that sending the Mirage here would have such a miraculous effect. He originally just wanted to catch a relatively powerful and valuable exotic beast to play with. Is the safety guaranteed? This Mirage is not friendly to humans. Will it cause any harm to the user when used? Lu Chang'an thought of many related movies and stories. This association is very inappropriate, but the main reason is that there are no relevant studies and cases in the real world for reference. Lu Chang'an has no way to scientifically analyze what unexpected situations may arise. Zhong Qing stood up, picked up the phone on his desk, and called someone over to answer Lu Chang'an's question. This person's name is Yu, who is the person in charge of this project. When he saw someone coming to Zhong Qing with a hot pot, he knew that this must be an important person. Even Zhongju sat aside and accompanied him, so he must not be overlooked. Zhong Qing asked Lu Chang'an's question again. Safety is definitely guaranteed. When the virtual world is launched, the Mirage, as the core of the world, also exists in this virtual world. At the same time, it is also constrained by this world, and those who constrain it are those of us who maintain the virtual world. You just think of it as an NPC in the game. The NPC can interact with the player, but if it is not allowed to harm the player, it will not be able to do so, U2 said confidently. Have you passed the test? Lu Chang'an looked at you Tuesday. The young man was in his 30s and was very handsome. The most important thing was that his skin was also very good. He was at the level of fresh meat. He could also work in the entertainment industry. He had good looks and good skin. No worse than those young guys in their 20s. It is really rare for a scientific researcher not to be bald and to be so handsome. The key is that he stared at Lu Chang'an with piercing eyes and was not attracted by Zhong Qing, who had just buttoned up another button. It has been tested. U2 knew that Lu Chang'an was still worried about safety, so he continued to explain, super life forms like mirages are different from us humans. They can easily transfer consciousness. When its consciousness enters the virtual world, at that time, its body is unconscious, and its body is under our control. If it does not want to stay in the virtual world forever and become data stored on the server, then it can only be obedient. Lu Chang'an was greatly surprised. He did not expect that Mirage actually had this ability. You must know that the kind of immortality envisioned by humans is to transform one's consciousness into data and break away from the body that is prone to aging and death. Although it is short and weak, let's update it continuously first. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 953. Many times, breakthroughs in some scientific experiments come from accidental reasons. After countless attempts, the most critical point is found. Just like U2's project achieved a breakthrough after they obtained an experimental subject like Mirage. Even if Mirage cannot be used in the future, they still know which direction to research in and are no longer headless flies. You said it is different from us humans. Do you mean that human consciousness cannot be transferred to the virtual world like a mirage? Lu Chang'an quickly accepted their test results. The ancient civilization brought by Tesla, then the miraculous bronze coffin survival capsule was even more incredible than what U2 and the others had built. Yes. We have tested that human consciousness can only be copied, but cannot be transferred out of the brain. In other words, during our experiment, consciousness cloning was achieved. One consciousness exists in the original body, and one consciousness exists in the original body. In the virtual world, U2 pointed at himself with some excitement. My data consciousness now exists in my personal computer, staying with my 32 T pieces. Picture? Is there that kind? U2 nodded with understanding. Most of them are games and animations. Those kind of movies only have 20 Ts. Only. Lu Chang'an was redefined by U2 as to what it means to be alone. He looked at U2, who was handsome, tall, and straight, and it turned out that a person cannot be judged by his appearance. U2, don't you have a girlfriend? As a mature woman, Zhong Qing certainly knew what the implicit piece in the conversation between Lu Chang'an and U2 meant. Zhongsuk, haven't you seen her? She is an actress. She goes on location everywhere during filming. Sometimes she leaves for months at a time. I can't leave Juncha easily. It's always difficult for people to let go of their psychological desires and desires. Realm controls physical desires. Watch the movie, it's nothing, U2 said disapprovingly. Lu Chang'an smiled. It was difficult to control his physical desires, but mentally he was in a state of having no desires or desires. He was really a talent. Zhong Qing didn't want to say anything. The man was really. She glanced at Lu Chang'an again. Lu Chang'an understood so much. Did he have it on his computer? However, I can take some selfies to enrich his collection. Just think about it, how could a beautiful mature woman really do this? Such an experiment should be dangerous to a certain extent. You actually used yourself as the experimental subject, which is commendable. Lu Chang'an admired such a young man. In order to allow U2 to work with peace of mind, her girlfriend also has our people around her to ensure that she will not cuckold U2 and affect U2's mood and work. Zhong Qing smiled slightly, many benefits and services are 3. Zhongqing is still faithfully executing what the wife has decided. The third wife has always been caring about top talents. Yu-Tu didn't show any surprise. He obviously knew this and had no objection at all. As a scientist without strong power, he wanted to protect his girlfriend in the entertainment industry. It was impossible for him to rely solely on his girlfriend's consciousness and loyalty. Possible. The occurrence of many things does not depend on whether you want it or not, but whether others want it or not. In fact, this is normal. Just think about protected military marriages, which are necessary. Can you and your data consciousness communicate? Lu Chang'an was very interested in this. Is this the new connotation of the idiom talking to oneself in the new era? Yes. At first, he was very scared and panicked. He felt that he was being deprived of his body. He quarreled with me and asked me to try to find a body for him. But slowly he started to indulge in games, animations, and movies. He said he can enter those worlds of creative content, just like traveling through worlds and scenes, and has endless fun, and he still has real physical feelings in those worlds. Yu-Tu showed a confused expression. It was a complete accident, and we still don't understand how he got that kind of experience of traveling through the world. Maybe this is some kind of special effect after the digitization of human consciousness. Consciousness copying. Since the original consciousness still exists, the copied consciousness can only be regarded as the consciousness of another person. Lu Chang'an thinks so. What Yu-Tu's data consciousness feels cannot be felt by Yu-Tu's day. When Yu-Tu is intimate with his girlfriend, what will his data consciousness feel like? Many readers who have read novels about the protagonist's doppelganger should be able to understand better. Readers basically only have a sense of immersion in the protagonist, but have no good impression of the doppelganger, or even hate it. Authors with strong skills generally do not write about doppelgangers, or emphasize their absolute love for doppelgangers. Control, and not let the clone come into contact with the heroine. Writing a plot between the clone and the heroine is similar to feeding shit to the readers. Of course, there is a difference between Yu-Tu's data consciousness and those clones with bodies. This data consciousness is indulged in Yu-Tu's spirit of exploration and experimentation, and indulges in a new world. Maybe one day he will miss Yu-Tu's girlfriend. At that time, by controlling Yu-Tu's computer phone, he had sex with Yu-Tu's girlfriend in a different place. It's very interesting, but you can't experience it in person. Lu Chang'an was a little regretful. He hoped to experience the feeling of traveling in those virtual worlds, but he could just copy his consciousness to experience it, otherwise he still wouldn't be able to feel it. Yes, you can't travel freely in those game animation worlds, but the experience of entering the safe virtual world we manage through Mirage is also very good. After Yu-Tu finished speaking, he encouraged him somewhat actively. Sir, don't you want to experience it? I'll think about it. Lu Chang'an nodded and started to cook the mutton in the hot pot. Zhongqing observed his words and knew that Lu Chang'an had at least finished asking questions for the day, so he sent Yu-Tu outside the door. Sir, can you speak in front of the third lady? Yu-Tu lowered his voice and said to Zhongqing. Those who engage in scientific research are not all deaf and have no thoughts. More than what you said, Zhongqing smiled. Miss Third's Bime universe plan basically means that we have to overturn the preliminary work and start over. I want this gentleman to experience it, and then go talk to Miss Third. Don't change all NPCs to sheep, and her. What's the point of having a power system with Bronze War BAA, Silver War BAA, and Gold War BAA? When everyone says a word, a little lamb that likes to be roasted in the fire will spit out from his mouth. What the hell is the setting? Yu-Tu is very resentful. The project is basically a finished product now. Zhu Huntang can't do whatever he wants since he is the boss, right? Zhongqing was stunned for a moment. She was concerned about too many projects. Sometimes Zhu Huntang's instructions would bypass her and be sent directly to the departments below. She really didn't know that Zhu Huntang had made such a request. This was basically equivalent to the Bailong Center was about to be completed, and suddenly the builders were asked to build the skyscraper 200 stories higher than it was. This plan was forwarded to you by Secretary Jin, right? Zhongqing thought of the problem. You two nodded. Zhongqing understood. Zhu Huntang knew that if this plan was sent to Zhongqing first, Zhongqing would definitely block it, but how could Secretary Jin have the courage to oppose Zhu Huntang's messy ideas? Back in the office, Zhongqing and Lu Chang'an talked about Zhu Huntang's Bleisure universe plan, but Lu Chang'an just ate mutton silently. Zhu Huntang behaves like a 3-year-old child. Lu Chang'an defined Zhu Huntang as someone who suddenly became more tolerant of her operations that caused cerebral hemorrhage after the age of 3. By the way, you too can copy consciousness, so have you ever thought about copying your consciousness into the robot Zhong's hiking? Lu Chang'an thought of the beautiful and attractive robot Zhong's hiking. It is said that, he is exactly the same as Zhongqing. The same everywhere. Zhong's hiking is an AI robot that is undergoing deep learning. After the learning is completed, it can control the central system of the entire underground base, just like the robot gold coins that used to control the underground base, but it will not be as dangerous and malicious to humans. It's too dangerous. Zhongqing shook his head resolutely. After all, the consciousness that copied the past is not me, it is another person. Even if I know the behavior pattern, thought and personality of this consciousness, it has entered another body. It's really just that people's hearts are separated from each other. Who knows what psychological changes she will have. Lu Chang'an agreed with Zhongqing's idea. The copied consciousness becomes an independent consciousness from the moment the copy is completed. Even if it is familiar, it is not controlled by your original consciousness. I have too many core secrets in my mind, as well as many things about the Zhu family. If I make a copy, the risk of leakage is too high. I feel that this copying consciousness is born with the original sin of rebellion and untrustworthiness. Zhongqing suddenly he rolled his eyes at Lu Chang'an. What's more, I feel that if a robot is built that copies my consciousness, you will be much more interested in it than you are in me. Lu Chang'an laughed loudly, took Zhongqing's chopsticks, picked out a piece of mutton and fed it to Zhongqing, as expected of a late-night acquaintance. You know me and I know you. Can't you just take care of your acquaintance? Zhongqing bit into the mutton, with charming eyes. After speaking, he turned his head and wiped his mouth. It was hot and dry to eat hot pot in the heating room. After Lu Chang'an finished eating the mutton hot pot, he visited the virtual world project again and saw U2's personal computer, which had no wireless module, no Bluetooth, and no internet connection and was installed in a shielding box. It seems that not only Zhongqing, but also no one trusts his copy consciousness. It is obviously the consciousness he knows best. Lu Chang'an did not try to enter the virtual world immediately, looked at the time and left. After walking out of the underground base, Lu Chang'an called Zhu Huntang. What are you messing with about that virtual world project? Don't you understand the principle of letting professional people do professional things? That's right, Zhu Huntang was angry. Damn old man, did you call me so late to influence my sheep counting just to scold me? Your tone was so fierce. Right of what? Professional people do professional things. I am a professional. I am the best at playing games. I have all the games on Steam. I also have a game room and many game consoles. I can buy game companies at will. Zhu Huntang sneered. Lu Chang'an actually thought she was unprofessional. It was simply funny. Didn't he know who installed Steam on his computer at home? What Zhu Huntang lets others pretend is of course what Zhu Huntang pretends to be. Professional talents are working for Zhu Huntang, which means that Zhu Huntang is also a professional. Lu Chang'an didn't know what to say for a while, and silently thought to himself, 3 years old, 3 years old, Bamboo is 3 years old. Let's see, this game is actually pretty good. I don't have to follow my plan, but if you play the game with me, I won't let them change it according to my plan, Zhu Huntang said, a little reluctantly said. Okay, Lu Chang'an nodded across the phone. There was no problem. Zhou Dongdong and Shang Guandandan liked playing games with Lu Chang'an. Often when Lu Chang'an was not at home, they would not play games. As soon as Lu Chang'an sat in front of the computer, they would come over to play games. The same is probably true for Zhu Huntang, who made her his own. Lu Chang'an hung up the phone. Wei. Wei. Wei 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 wei, Zhu Huntang fell silent when he heard Lu Chang'an agreed. He shouted several times into the phone before humming twice and putting down the phone. Ha ha ha, damn old man, you will fall into the trap one day. I had no intention of letting them actually change according to that plan, I was waiting for your call. Zhu Huntang happily turned into a sheep and stood in the bedroom. She ran wildly for dozens of meters, and then stopped her body in front of the wall with her forehooves together. Although she couldn't change it according to her plan, the virtual world was the Bime universe after all. Wait until you enter it to see how the little fairy sheep rides on the big fairy sheep. Powerful and blessed. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 954. Zhu Huntang is accustomed to using mobility aids to shuttle around the floors, so the space layout of the 4 floors has been optimized to facilitate her smooth riding on things like a balance bike without too many twists and turns. Blind spots appear. The same goes for the bedroom, which makes it easier for Zhu Huntang to turn into a sheep and run around in a circle. After running around excitedly for a few times, Zhu Huntang jumped on the bed, got in from one end of the quilt, and then got out from the other end, tapping his front hooves on the edge of the bed. In fact, as an elegant young lady, Zhu Huntang usually prefers to show her static beauty instead of jumping around and running around like this. But after turning into a sheep, I felt very different. I just wanted to jump around when I had nothing to do, let alone when I was excited. Many people who have raised dogs know that dogs sometimes run around for no reason at home, running from one end to another, as if they have nowhere to vent their energy. Zhu Huntang remembered that his behavior just now was like a sect master who had nothing to do, so he stopped running and stayed in bed, thinking about how to conquer Lu Chang'an in the Beam universe and let him take the position of the master of the Kyushu Fenglai sword section, hand it over, or admit the fact that she is the supreme leader of the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect. Although becoming the supreme leader of the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect came true in his dream, as long as he has the ability to turn dreams into reality, there is no difference between dreaming and reality. This is Zhu Huntang's logic. Most people can't understand it, but it doesn't matter. Zhu Huntang never cares whether others understand it. It has no impact on her anyway. Ever since Lu Chang'an appeared, Zhu Huntang found that his logic was always being criticized. He overturned it, which once made Zhu Huntang suspect that this world was no longer the meme universe. This is probably the so-called collapse of the worldview that often makes cultivators' heads explode in stories, but Zhu Huntang is at the master level after all, and will not collapse so easily. She must continue to fight Lu Chang'an's wits and courage until he is finally willing to let her ride on him. The neck is domineering. Zhu Huntang rolled left and right, fell out of the bed wrapped in quilt, and got out again. He imitated the swaying look of a toy wooden horse being ridden, and went to take a shower in high spirits. The lamb just wants to be so happy. Lu Chang'an, who had been caught up in conspiracies and was facing many crises without realizing it, was just sighing that he had learned a lot after leaving the underground base. The long-lasting existence that mankind dreams of is so close to being realized. This kind of closeness may take a long time to truly cross, but we have finally seen the light of day, right? Lu Chang'an is not interested in the ethical issues involved. Those are things that only ordinary humans are concerned about. After all, he is just pretending to be an ordinary human being. Faced with this kind of problem, his mentality is naturally not that of an ordinary college student. After all, only when the consciousness is uploaded, rather than copied, can it be said that it has got rid of the biological body that is prone to decay? But if the consciousness is really uploaded, many people will probably wait until the end is approaching before doing such a thing. After all, uploading consciousness actually means that from now on, one's existence depends on a different condition. Energy, network, and external hardware for storing data all have a great impact on consciousness data. If you become data conscious, will you be affected by network viruses? Will a data killer appear and completely wipe out data consciousness? These are all safety issues that need to be considered. Realizing the uploading of human consciousness is actually just the first step. There are still many problems that need to be solved before it can be widely used by humans as a long-lasting solution. It is eternal existence, not eternal life. There is a big difference here. After all, when the body dies and the consciousness is uploaded, is this still life? At present, it seems that life is more precious. Perhaps the universe is filled with data consciousnesses, and they have already visited the Earth countless times. Lu Chang'an would not choose to let his consciousness leave his current body anyway. After all, he does not have the problem that human bodies are fragile and easy to perish. Uploading consciousness to obtain eternal existence may not be a helpless move for humans, but not the best strategy. Thinking about the usefulness of all this, Lu Chang'an slowly walked back to Hedong. As soon as he entered the community, he saw a small figure beside the dark building wall in the distance, trying to stick as close to the wall as possible to avoid attracting attention. Quietly moving toward the vegetable field. She also held a long shovel, carefully keeping the tip of the shovel from touching the ground to avoid making a scratching sound. There is no doubt that the only person who would act like this in this community in the middle of the night is Shang Guandandan. Lu Chang'an did not go to see her digging for treasures. He came to the sycamore tree and looked up at the lights at home. He went upstairs and opened the door and saw Zhou Shuling watching TV and having fun. It was country love story. Zhou Dongdong fell asleep next to her, holding a textbook in his hand. It was obviously a fine tradition of Zhou and his daughter to read books to help them sleep. "Are you back?" Zhou Shuling stretched her neck and saw that Lu Chang'an didn't have any late-night snacks in his hand. The third lady's dinner tonight was very exquisite, but she couldn't understand why one dish was only enough for one bite. "Are you hungry? Let me make you something to eat." "I'm not hungry, you can make something to eat." Lu Chang'an shook his head. Zhou Shuling was too lazy to move. If Lu Chang'an also ate, she would be willing to do it for two people. Now she just thought of losing weight and keeping in shape. Women should eat less at night anyway. "Why did you fall asleep on the sofa and didn't tell her to go to bed?" Lu Chang'an said, pointing to Zhou Dongdong, who was lying on his back with his mouth open and snoring, just like a little piggy sleeping in any place. "Oh, I asked her to study." Zhou Shuling seemed to have just remembered that her son was beside her, and shook her head angrily, read a few lines of books and fall asleep. "How will you be able to get into college in the future? You have to set a good example yourself. How can a mother like you have a child like this?" Lu Chang'an used to think it was the child Zhou Dongdong's problem, but now he realized that it was the mother's problem after all. Just like Zhu Huntang was raised bad, it's all Su Mei's problem. "I will get into Hunan University before her," Zhou Shuling said confidently. Compared with others, Zhou Shuling didn't have much confidence, but she always felt that she should not be worse than her own children. "You too." Lu Chang'an pointed at Zhou Shuling and Zhou Dongdong. "If one of you can get into Hunan University, I will eat all the furniture and appliances in this house." Zhou Shuling couldn't help but laugh, and quickly grabbed the electric radiator. "That's no good. You can just eat the rest." The electric radiator is Dandan's beloved treasure. "Is there anything delicious?" Zhou Dongdong woke up quickly, sat up, rubbed his eyes and looked around. "No." After Lu Chang'an finished speaking, Zhou Dongdong closed his eyes and fell down, then went to sleep. Zhou Shuling rubbed her belly. You can go and eat whatever you want. Lu Chang'an noticed that Zhou Shuling didn't feel full. You don't want to eat? Okay, you go ahead and give me some. Lu Chang'an waved his hand. Zhou Shuling then got up, twisted her waist, ran to the refrigerator, rummaged around, and then went to the kitchen to work. Lu Chang'an was afraid that Zhou Dongdong would wake up again after sensing the call of food, so he carried her upstairs and put her on the small bed. Sleep. While Zhou Shuling was making the steamed dumplings, dipping sauce, and sweet wine for the eggs, Shang Guandandan also held up her skirt and went upstairs panting. When she saw Lu Chang'an sitting behind the electric heating table, she straightened her body quickly to avoid letting him see. He thought about the Queen Mother's hard work and tried to figure out some other things. I ran upstairs, so I was out of breath. Shang Guandandan explained calmly, sat down, held the sweet wine in his hands, mixed it with eggs, and started drinking. Zhou Shuling considered that Shang Guandandan would also eat it, so she made 3 portions of sweet wine and eggs. In such weather, sitting around the electric radiator table at night, watching TV and drinking a bowl of hot sweet wine and eggs, it felt like very happy. Then drink slowly and don't choke, Zhou Shuling said to Shang Guandandan with a smile. Lu Chang'an thought, if he just said that he had just seen her going to the vegetable field, Shang Guandandan would probably fall to the ground and run anxiously to dig out her treasure and change it. But he is a kind-hearted person after all, and the little old lady's caring heart for her baby makes people unable to bear to stab him again after stabbing him. Zhou Shuling and Shang Guandandan finished eating steamed dumplings and drank sweet wine to make eggs together. Lu Chang'an suggested that the 3 of them could play landlord because Shang Guandandan made 10,000 yuan yesterday. If you lose, I can pay you back, Lu Chang'an said to Shang Guandandan. Shang Guandandan originally wanted to play, but after hearing Lu Chang'an's words, he hurried downstairs to sleep. Let's fight, but if I lose, you have to pay me back. Zhou Shuling is still full of energy and is not in a hurry to go to bed. Ever since Lu Chang'an gave her nutritional supplements, Zhou Shuling often feels like she is in good spirits even if she doesn't sleep all night. But I can sleep whenever I want at night and still sleep soundly. Let's change the rules. Lu Chang'an thought for a while and said. Okay. We play double bridge, and the loser takes off 1 piece of clothing. Zhou Shuling suddenly blushed and tugged tightly on the hem of her thermal underwear. She was only wearing a down jacket with thermal underwear and socks underneath. She just took off the down jacket when she felt a little warm after eating. Haha, tip, before playing this game, you can wear as many clothes as possible. A pair of stockings counts as 1 piece. If you wear a few more pairs, you will take advantage. Lu Chang'an took good care of Zhou Shuling's card skills and gave her advice. Zhou Shuling thought about it and realized that it was indeed the case. She just needed to wear more clothes. Once she felt a little dangerous after losing a few games, she would stop playing. So Zhou Shuling hurriedly went upstairs to add equipment. When she went downstairs again, her 2 slender legs were wrapped in stockings like elephant legs, and her upper body was even more bloated, like the robot Dabai. What surprised Zhou Shuling was that Lu Chang'an actually took a shower and sat next to the electric heating table wearing only a pair of big pants. How are you doing this? Zhou Shuling looked at herself and then at Lu Chang'an. If he lost, what would happen? Play whatever you want, come on, Lu Chang'an laughed. Zhou Shuling realized that Lu Chang'an didn't intend to play at all. He was just teasing her by asking her to wear so many stockings and clothes. You bad guy, Zhou Shuling's cheeks were red and she rushed over angrily. She raised her swollen and heavy arms and didn't hit Lu Chang'an a few times. She herself was so tired that she couldn't move on the sofa. Lu Chang'an smiled, took a shirt from the chair and put it on. He reached out and grabbed Zhou Shuling's hair, and helped her take off a few pieces of clothing on her upper body. She was reluctant and laborious to put it on, and now she had to rely on herself. Taking it off would be even harder. After Lu Chang'an helped her take off a few thin coats so that she could move around easily, Zhou Shuling took off her stockings while angrily, and then stared at Lu Chang'an angrily. Lu Chang'an just laughed and continued to watch TV. In fact, Country Love Story can still be watched. Although it is not as good as the previous films, it is still interesting to watch a few old men fight with each other. It is just that it is not interesting to talk about those young people. Fortunately it is on demand online, just fast forward and skip. You are more annoying than Xieguancan, Zhou Shuling looked at the TV and said to Lu Chang'an. Then you are much more beautiful than Yongqiang Niang. Zhou Shuling's cheeks were slightly red. The Yongqiang Niang on TV was Xieguancan's wife. He said so, Zhou Shuling's heart was beating loudly, and she suddenly felt that her body was even hotter than when she had just put on so many clothes. I felt a little uncomfortable yesterday. It was already midnight when I started typing, and I finished it all night long. I asked for all kinds of things. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 955. When Lu Chang'an woke up in the morning, he felt warm and comfortable all over his body. He sank into the sofa, pillows and blankets, and there was a soft and fragrant body clinging to him, as if everyone woke up at Anyuan's house. Come morning. When I opened my eyes, I fell asleep while watching Country Love Story last night. I lay on the sofa and closed my eyes without moving. I remember that before falling asleep yesterday, Zhou Shuling still had her eyes wide open and giggled from time to time. Probably not long after she fell asleep, she also fell asleep, and now she was nestled next to Lu Chang'an, holding the hem of the thermal jacket tightly with both hands. Her face, there was a flush on his face, and a happy smile curled up at the corner of his mouth. He didn't know what sweet dream he was having. A woman still needs to be happy and relaxed, without any burdens, and without worries about food and clothing, in order to become more beautiful and attractive. Especially the moist breath that slowly develops will make people feel that she is completely different from before. Take the body fragrance on her body as an example. Zhou Shuling didn't have any body fragrance on her body before, but now she doesn't deliberately use perfume or soak in too many cosmetics, so she naturally has a very comfortable smell. At this moment, like a pig escaping from a pig pen, Zhou Dongdong pushed his head against the door and walked in, holding a soft, cold donut in one hand and his own astronaut suit-like hand in the other. Cotton jacket. This kind of cotton coat is thick and heavy, which greatly hinders the children from jumping around. Moreover, there is no way to put it on by oneself, which is beyond Zhou Dongdong's ability to take care of himself. When he woke up and found that his mother was not at home, Zhou Dongdong came down to ask Brother Chang'an for help in getting dressed. Why did you get up so early? Lu Chang'an sat up and looked at the window. It was not bright yet. I dreamed that you were eating without calling me, so you felt more and more hungry, and you woke up hungry. Zhou Dongdong stuffed the cold donut into his mouth. Lu Chang'an reached out and pulled her over, holding a cotton coat to help her get dressed. As soon as he moved, Zhou Shuling also woke up, covered her mouth and yawned, looked around confusedly, and then looked at the TV that was still playing. Oh, which episode is it on? Song Xiaofeng, are you married to Song Qinglian? Mom, did you fight with Brother Chang'an last night? Zhou Dongdong looked at Zhou Shuling expectantly. Zhou Shuling was still a little confused and didn't realize for a moment why she wanted to fight with Lu Chang'an. Firstly, she couldn't beat Lu Chang'an. Secondly, she was the one who beat Lu Chang'an. But she beat him unilaterally, so it didn't count as a fight. Lu Chang'an never touched her. But Lu Chang'an was already laughing loudly, and helped Zhou Dongdong fasten the 4-button of the cotton padded jacket that most children would not have the strength to press in. Zhou Shuling frowned and punched him, and then she remembered what Zhou Dongdong meant by fighting. Zhou Dongdong thought that Zhou Shuling would only attack Zhou Dongdong, but would not dare to attack Lu Chang'an, and Songdezi's mother would ride on her father and hit her father. In short, this fight, Zhou Shuling originally had a light flushed cheek, which was as thick as rouge under Lu Chang'an's laughter. "Didn't you fight?" Songdezi said, "If adults sleep together at night, they will fight. Are you afraid that I will know if you fight?" "I won't criticize you." Zhou Dongdong licked his fingers and said loudly. "You stupid kid, we didn't fight. Would adults just fight casually?" Zhou Shuling became angry, got up and beat Zhou Dongdong. Zhou Dongdong was wearing thick cotton clothes and was not very afraid. After bravely breaking free, he yelled ouch and got under the electric heating table to hide. Zhou Shuling was too lazy to catch her again. Seeing that Lu Chang'an was still laughing and looking at his heartless look, she was the one who blushed with embarrassment, so she also punched him several times. After beating the small one and the big one, Zhou Shuling felt a majestic feeling and a strange sense of satisfaction. After beating her, she rubbed her hands and put on her down jacket and prepared to make breakfast. Lu Chang'an felt itchy on the instep of his feet. It was probably because Zhou Dongdong picked up a pen under the electric heating table and scribbled on his insteps. He took his feet back, kicked on his slippers, and went to wash his face and brush his teeth. Coming out of the washroom, he heard the sound of clinking spatulas from the kitchen. Lu Chang'an stretched out and saw Zhou Dongdong emerge from under the electric heating table, run around Lu Chang'an, and then raised his hands and said majestically, "Brother Chang'an, do you think I look like Sailor Moon?" Like Lu Chang'an nodded seriously, "Go and show your mother that you are Sailor Moon." When Zhou Shuling heard the voice, she poked her head out of the kitchen and took a look. She saw Zhou Dongdong wearing a pair of flesh-colored stockings with crotchless stockings on her head and a few strokes on her forehead with an ink pen. Those stockings were naturally dropped by Zhou Shuling under the sofa last night and were picked up by Zhou Dongdong. "Mom, I am Sailor Moon." Zhou Dongdong pointed to the ink mark on his forehead. "This is the moon." "Return to Sailor Moon, I think you look more like Bao Gong." Zhou Shuling was funny and angry, mainly because the big cotton clothes Zhou Dongdong was wearing didn't hurt and was labor-intensive to fight. Zhou Shuling pointed at Lu Chang'an, "You are responsible for beating her on the forehead. Wash off the ink, and anyone who disobeys will eat clear soup noodles in the morning, no code." After Zhou Shuling finished speaking, she turned around and entered the kitchen again. Lu Chang'an frowned and looked at Zhou Dongdong. "I didn't even see your mother beating you, and she still had to wash your face. Then I won't wash it? How about I go to school like this today?" Zhou Dongdong looked forward to it. "Okay. Lu Chang'an. I can hear you. Wash it, wash it. To be honest, I don't think you look like the moon. You look like your forehead is stuck with a mouthful of betel nut residue that someone spat on. You draw the moon for me. No, your mother will not only beat you, but also me." "Ah, then did you guys fight last night?" The sound in the kitchen paused for a moment, and then the faucet was turned on, making a loud splash. Zhou Shuling didn't want to hear the conversation between the unscrupulous brother and the stupid kid. After helping Zhou Dongdong wash her face, Lu Chang'an took the textbook and took her downstairs to read aloud. The sky was bright and the mist on the Siang River had spread throughout the night and had covered the entire community. There is moisture in the breath, the sycamore leaves above the head are green, the ground is wet, and the palms holding the books are cold. The diligent and studious children should overcome the difficulties and read the text aloud in such weather, hoping that being able to go from last to second to last, or improve to the second to last score, so that the number 1 from last to 2 people tied for last is also an improvement. Under the sycamore tree, besides Zhou Dongdong, there was also Shang Guandandan. She didn't stay up late watching TV last night and fell asleep early. She got up early today too. What she slightly regretted was that she didn't agree to play landlord with Lu Chang'an last night. She didn't agree because Lu Chang'an said he would pay her back if she lost, which caused Shang Guandandan to panic. During the spring festival, Shang Guandandan received a lot of New Year's money, so she started a landlord fight with Lu Chang'an. At first she lost more than 100, 500, and 1000, but Lu Chang'an returned them to her. Later, she lost 3. Lu Chang'an never returned more than 1,000 to her. After Shang Guandandan's painstaking planning and painstaking strategy, he finally got back the 3,000 yuan and successfully bought an electric pony car. However, this incident left a psychological shadow on Shang Guandandan, who was full of fear of Lu Chang'an's tricks. But today, Shang Guandandan thought about it and felt that Lu Chang'an would still pay her back if he won at first, so let's play for a while. When he feels that he won't pay back if he loses again, he should decisively stop and stop the loss. Maybe you won't lose all the time, but you may win. As long as you stop in time, this is a guaranteed winning situation. Did you play cards last night? Shang Guandandan asked while wiping the electric car. After being away from Juncha for 2 days, after returning yesterday, I didn't have time to express my intimacy with my beloved electric pony carriage, so the first thing Shang Guandandan did when he got up early in the morning was not to boil water, but to polish the electric pony carriage. No, Lu Chang'an didn't tell Shang Guandandan about tricking Zhou Shuling into wearing a lot of clothes and turning into a ball, so as to prevent Shang Guandandan from showing off and making nonsense. Brother Chang'an had a fight with his mother last night, just like Songdazi's mother and father Zhou Dongdong reported positively. Read your book. Lu Chang'an grabbed Zhou Dongdong's textbook, patted her forehead, and returned the textbook to her. Giggle. Shang Guan laughed lightly. As the queen mother in charge of the entire harem, of course she was well aware of the metaphors and allusions to these things. Zhou Shuling was originally the daughter-in-law who held the queen's seal. Sleeping is a matter of course. So Shang Guandandan went back and took out a few firecrackers, lit them with a lighter, and made a crisp pop sound in the morning to celebrate Zhou Shuling being raped by the dragon. These broken firecrackers were all picked up by Zhou Dongdong. They were originally wet and could not be lit or set off, so Shang Guandandan took them and put them next to the small stove to dry. Using a small stove to dry firecrackers was something Shang Guandandan knew how to do. Lu Chang'an didn't say anything about such potential safety hazards. It was normal for the little old lady to do stupid things from time to time every day. You ride an electric pony carriage and take me to the vegetable market to buy some nutritional supplements for Dongdong's mother. You must not know how to cherish the beauty. Your rudeness and mania will inevitably hurt Dongdong's mother's body. Shang Guandan, based on his own personal experience, Dan decided to take pity on his most beloved daughter-in-law. Lu Chang'an took the car key from Shang Guandandan, and before Shang Guandandan came up with the hem of his skirt, he twisted the handle and rushed out. Wait for me, Shang Guandandan chased for a few steps, then stood there and gave up the pursuit. He was obviously ashamed, hiding his face and running away. After all, he is a caring and loving mother, so why should he catch up at this moment? Is he embarrassed? Shang Guandandan nodded with satisfaction at his understanding, stretched out his hands to adjust his sleeves, and walked back to the sycamore tree with his head held high, preparing to give instructions on Dongdong's homework next week. After all, she is also Dongdong's godmother, and this is also her responsibility. Location: PGMMP. I'm really immortal. Author: Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 956. The experiences of Leonardo da Vinci, Newton, Einstein, Yang Zhening, Zhu Huntang, Shang Guandandan, Zhou Shuling, and Zhou Dongdong tell us that self-confidence cannot improve learning ability. Whether you learn well or not mainly depends on talent, not look at confidence. In the second month of the spring of the third year, King Jizi, there was food for the sun. In the third month, Gang and Wuxu, the king of heaven, died. In the summer, in the fourth month of Xinmao, the Jun family died. In the autumn, the son of the Wu family came to ask for help. In the eighth month, Geng Chen, Song Gong He, and died. In the second month of the 10th day of winter, the Marquis of Qi and Zhengbo formed an alliance at Shimen. At the end of Gui dynasty, Duke Mu of the Song dynasty was buried. Shang Guandandan looked at Zhou Dongdong's text. She was reading the simplest text in the first grade, and there was nothing to teach her. Shang Guandandan thought about it and memorized a passage from Spring and Autumn to show that she had high-end literature. His coaching ability is of little use in helping first-grade students with their homework. Sister Dandan, what are you reading? Zhou Dongdong felt like he heard the tightening curse recited by Tang Monk in Journey to the West. Thinking like this, Zhou Dongdong's textbook fell to the ground, and she reached out and hugged her head, because she was a child, Sun Wukong, and her head would hurt when she heard the tightening curse. It's useless, a lot of people can't understand the text for most of their lives. I saw a mulberry tree by the wall of the vegetable field last night with half its head stretched out to look at me. Let's go pick mulberries to eat, Shang Guandandan suggested. Okay, Zhou Dongdong stepped over the textbook that fell on the ground, shook his hands left and right with his fists, and followed Shang Guandandan's butt very relaxedly and happily. Facts have proved that for the vast majority of children, adult supervision is indispensable for them to study hard. Lu Chang'an also knew this, but he didn't expect that as soon as he left the community, Shang Guandandan took Zhou Dongdong to pick mulberries. For a long time, Lu Chang'an had been worried that after Lu Hanqin was born, playing with Zhu Huntang, Zhou Dongdong, and others, with Shang Guandandan holding a thermos standing next to him, would be enough to make all Qinyanan's pregnancy education in vain. After riding his electric bike out of the community, Lu Chang'an galloped gracefully on the empty streets. There were few vehicles and even fewer pedestrians in the morning. Of course, he did not run away in shame as Shang Guandandan thought. He just wanted to hurry up. Try your luck at the wet market. Shang Guandandan said that he wanted to replenish Zhou Shuling's body, which was completely nonsense. Zhou Shuling did not need to replenish her body, and even if she needed to replenish her body, it would not be for the reason that Shang Guandandan understood. When it comes to women replenishing their bodies, Lu Chang'an thinks of creatures like crucian carp. The crucian carp that city dwellers eat daily is artificially raised large crucian carp. It is large and has a bland taste. Whether it is used to make traditional radish shredded crucian carp soup or steamed, the taste is quite average. Crucian carp still eat small crucian carp, not the kind that have not grown up, but the ones that grow naturally in small ponds in rural areas. When I lived in rural areas, especially in the summer and autumn, men in the village often liked to bathe in ponds or rivers. Then they would dig around in the cracks of stones and catch a lot of crucian carp, which they would then put in their crotches and take home. Sometimes you can also harvest eels, soft-shell turtles, crabs, and other things. In those days, these things were not rare. People were simple, so as long as you were not caught by the pond contractor, you could take them directly. Nowadays, living in the city, it is difficult to eat a few wild small crucian carp. Only in the vegetable market, farmers often come to the city to sell fish, and they bring some small crucian carp with them. They are often wrapped up as soon as they are taken out, so they cannot be bought. It depends on luck and getting there early. For the sake of the little crucian carp, even Lu Chang'an, who has always been leisurely, had to ride an electric bicycle on the road. This is probably the so-called sense of ritual. When they arrived at the vegetable market, in the aisle next to the wall, a small dump truck had just stopped. The master opened the awning behind it and took a small bucket and placed it on the ground. Lu Chang'an stretched his head to look and saw that it was indeed a lively wild crucian carp. The back is slightly out of the water, the silver scales exposed when turned over are still glowing with gold, and the belly is even more snow white, looking fresh and delicious. I want them all. Before Lu Chang'an could speak, a young woman said happily, just in time to give milk to my sister-in-law. Breastfeeding, this is a serious matter. Lu Chang'an did not reach out to snatch it away directly. He said in a consultative tone, beauty, in fact, pig's trotters and soybean soup, peanut and pork ribs soup, and black bone chicken soup all have the same effect. My sister-in-law doesn't like to eat those. Knowing that he wanted to compete with her for crucian carp, the young woman retorted calmly. Then you don't have to ask for them all. Give me half. I also woke up early to find rare things. Lu Chang'an continued to discuss. If the other party objects, he will leave quietly. Who lets others speak first? As long as the other party is reasonable and polite, Lu Chang'an will not stuff the crucian carp one by one into her mouth and ask her to wrap it up. The young woman turned her head and glanced at Lu Chang'an impatiently, and met Lu Chang'an's eyes. She felt that those eyes were as clear as washed pearls. In the faint morning light, next to the noisy vegetable market, this young man turned out to be, it's as pure as jade, especially around the slender neck, and the traces of the collarbone make people can't help but imagine the seductive rhythm of his breathing. Okay, yes, but if I don't buy enough crucian carp and my sister-in-law doesn't have enough milk, my mother and my brother will be irritable and might scold me. I feel wronged and I have to find someone to talk to. The young woman's cheeks were slightly red. After all, this theory is very far-fetched. The far-fetched truth is also true. Lu Chang'an took out his mobile phone. Young male college students in the new era, while learning to protect themselves, how can they not understand the tricks of these women? Aren't they just trying to get his WeChat? After adding each other on WeChat, the young woman paid Lu Chang'an half of the money, and then asked Lu Chang'an to send her a red envelope on WeChat. Small crucian carp is a rare thing, but it only costs 6 yuan a pound, a total of 20 yuan. Lu Chang'an paid 10 yuan. How many milligrams of crucian carp did he buy? Most people will do this after Beidou. Lu Chang'an thought of this topic and planned to go back and take the Zhou Dongdong test. After buying the crucian carp, Lu Chang'an walked around the vegetable market, bought lettuce and spring bamboo shoots, and when he came out, he saw a woman setting up a stall by the wall. A strong man in his 30s, he kicked the woman out. A bag of green peppers was kicked over. Who asked you to sell chili peppers? Huh? Who asked you to sell them? The man yelled while stepping and kicking on a bag of green peppers. I saw that the local chili peppers are sold well in the market now. You guys didn't share the peppers with me, so I just got some of them myself. The woman said tremblingly, reaching out to protect herself. The bag of green peppers happened to be stepped on by the man's palm, and he suddenly let out a scream. The man did not let go of his hand, but instead stepped on it hard. The surrounding vendors gathered around with different expressions. Someone reached out and touched the man's arm, but let go without saying anything. You all have to watch out. It's not me who bullied her, it's her who broke the rules, the man snorted, let go of the woman's hand, and pointed around. You don't know what can be sold and what can't be sold? I want to die. Bar. Brother Chow, forget it, her family is in trouble. You confiscated her bag of chili peppers. She didn't know you would come here today, otherwise she wouldn't dare. Calm down your anger and take a sip of betel nut. As everyone tried to persuade him, the woman looked at Brother Chow imploringly, and then looked around, hoping that everyone would put in a good word for her again. Lu Chang'an walked over. This woman had half of her white hair, messily and casually tied up. There were still a lot of vegetable leaves on her body. Her palms were as thin as chicken feet. She shrank and looked timid and uneasy. Her actual age, they are probably less than 40, but now they look about 50 or 60. Lu Chang'an seemed to see Zhou Shuling, who had not met him. People like Brother Chow are the so-called vegetable tyrants. They have the final say on what can and cannot be sold in the vegetable market, and whether they can sell more or less. Their method is generally to forcefully harvest vegetables from growers at low prices and sell them to vendors in the vegetable market at high prices. When someone reports that the vegetables from growers are rotten in the ground and cannot be sold, the corresponding vegetables purchased in the market cost a lot. When the price is doubled, it is usually the food boss who is causing trouble. There won't be a next time. If you break the rules again, I will break your other leg. Brother Chow mentioned the bag of chili peppers. It was not convenient to handle it in front of so many people. He would wait until she closed the stall in the afternoon to clean it up. Brother Chow left with the peppers. He still needs to be smart when doing things. Hitting someone in front of everyone can indeed establish authority and warn others not to break the rules, but it is easy to get into trouble. It is better to let everyone find out afterwards that the person who broke the rules suddenly disappeared. Or missing arms and legs for no apparent reason, which is even more intimidating. Don't do this again, the vendor who was trying to persuade Brother Chow just now said to the woman angrily. Yes, if Brother Chow gets angry, you will bring trouble to us. How will we sell the poor food then? Go back quickly. When Brother Chow comes back later, he might get angry when he sees you. How long will it take for no one to dare to sell vegetables secretly without following the quota? After everyone talked and dispersed, the woman sat there blankly, half squatting with her legs pressed, wiped her face, raised her head, smiled again, and said to Lu Chang'an, who was still standing next to her, "Let's buy groceries, take a look, they are all fresh." Lu Chang'an bought some more tomatoes and peas. After paying, he walked slowly in the direction where Brother Chow left. "Are you up? Send me some clay pots," Lu Chang'an called Li Hongfang.